I would like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Present.
Councilman Iacilli.
Here.
Councilman Pell.
Here.
Councilman Scarrow.
Present.
All right, we're going to start the meeting today with a presentation on shell sculptures by Christine Taylor, Hampton Bays Chamber of Commerce. Why don't you come on up and join us? Here, sit with us here.
Sit with us here.
We have microphones here.
It's like a fire.
Well, thank you for having me. Lisa Porco, who's the secretary from the chamber, and myself came up with this concept probably about last year at some point, and we had talked with the previous town board about, you know, some works and everything like that. She's been handling it from there on out with dealing with the person who's creating them and all of the other information. So she put together this presentation. I'm sorry for getting it over to you so late last night. I didn't get it until then. So we were putting it together. But so basically what it is, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Cows on Parade in New York City. They did it to basically bring, you know, tourism, something exciting. It's now with this day and age is an Instagrammable moment, you know, hashtags Hampton Bays, hashtags, you know, Cowfish, wherever it may be, Ponquag Beach, things like that, just to get more tourism into Hampton Bays to patronize our restaurants, our shops, things like that. Hampton Bays has some of the best assets, we believe, in Southampton. We have amazing beachfront, more waterfront access than any other hamlet, really, that's open to the public. You know, I mean, obviously the beach is public, but just where people can go eat, dine, parks, things like that. And we have amazing restaurants. We, you know, but not a lot of foot traffic on downtown. So we want those businesses on downtown to get some more attention. So we were figuring put some things on downtown, people will start going there. And then eventually, if there's a new development down there, then, you know, the traffic will just merge into the new development, basically get more people into Hampton Bays to patronize and support our local town. So the Shell program came up as kind of that concept.
The scallop shell is your new logo for the chamber.
It is, apparently it was supposed to be a clamshell was our logo, but with the scallop shell is much prettier than a clamshell, so we did the clamshell. And then we talked with the local school so that the children in the class, they would be painting them. So they would get, you know, a theme, they would come up with a drawing, it would get presented to wherever it's going, and then once approved, it would be done on the shell. So that way we're engaging the local community as well. If somebody wanted to do their own painting and have somebody else paint it, that's 100% fine too. But it's just a way to get everybody involved, and then they would be placed strategically around in different areas so that people could, you know, let's say, do all of them. It could be like a scavenger hunt one day to find all the shells and things like that in Hampton Bays. It's just a way to bring back some fun, some exciting things to Hampton Bays. Years ago, when I first moved in 2000, I don't even remember, but in the early 2000s, there was a lot to do in Hampton Bays. Like, you had all the clubs, and a 25-year-old at that time was like, this is the greatest place ever. Now that we're in our 40s, you know, it's just like, it's still an amazing place to live and raise a family, but it would be nice to have something for the kids to do, like, be like, you know, oh, look at the shells. Like, my daughter, I'm from a small town in Florida, and we have oranges everywhere, like painted on buildings and things like that. And every time we pass, my daughter's like, look, an orange mom, an orange mom, an orange mom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that concept. Get the kids excited about that. Get them proud of where they live, you know, things like that. Just something unique.
Yeah,
So.
I went to a conference in Saratoga once, and they had similar things out on the street.
Yes, it was a different, like not a shell or a cow, but they do have different things. And we were just driving through the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, or like going to Tennessee, and they have bears. So they have all these painted bears in like Cherokee, North Carolina. So it's kind of cool to like see different places have different things. And since we're such like a fishing community, even though we don't have so many scallops, we just, thought the scallop shell was pretty.
Yeah.
So went with that.
How are they affixed to the location?
So basically, they have a platform on them, and then underneath it would be, I don't know what you call it. It's like a metal, like it's not a stake,
Rebar?
but it's like a rebar. Yep, and it would be something like that goes in the ground, so it goes pretty deep, so that they can't be like pushed over or knocked over, or, I mean, if somebody wanted to take them, I mean, it'd probably be an effort, and
Yeah.
but they would be in there pretty securely.
Who's going to arrange for that to happen? I mean, you said some of these are going to go to individual people that would buy them from the
Right.
chamber.
So the way it works is we got a grant from PSEG, a very generous grant they do revitalization grants, things like that. This is to bring something, different into Hampton Bays. And so we got $10,000 to cover them.
Great.
Yeah, so it's amazing. It covered, I think we have 17 shells that we were able to cover by doing this. And so we were gonna donate them to the different locations, and then they would be their shells. Like, they're like, okay, they're your shells now. You can do with them what you please. We are working on how, because we don't have them yet, so we want to talk to somebody to see, the best person to fix them. Until we have them straight in hand, it's, kind of hard for us to explain to somebody. So, but we will be working with a local company to install them everywhere, except if somebody wanted to install their own, they could install their own depending on where they're putting it. Like someone wanted to put it in one of their storefront windows in town, so they could put theirs in their storefront window, and they'll have to figure out how to secure it.
How many do you have total?
We have 17, because what we did is we started, they're coming, they should be here May 18th. So we have 17 total, and then what we were gonna do is open it up to the businesses in Hampton Bays, like the chamber businesses, and anybody who wanted to purchase one through the chamber, they could purchase their own and like design it, put their logo on it, whatever they wanna do to be part of the program. So, but these were the ones we were using with the grant money, so since they were bought with grant money, we cannot sell them, we're not, we're just giving them away to people. That's why we chose all the locations, like the elementary school, and the school's on board with it, a lot of these other places are on board with it. I have to wait to hear back from the firehouse, but it hasn't been an issue with any of the other places. Everybody's like excited about it. Susan Von Freddie from the Beautification Society was like really excited. She thought it was like a great idea.
Yeah.
Was
you
this
know.
brought to one of their meetings? I was gonna ask that
I
question.
spoke with her about it privately. It wasn't brought to the meeting just because I wanted to put it past you all first, and then.
But they like it.
Oh, yeah, Susan Von Freddie, I sent her the pictures of it, and she was like, oh, this is great. So I think it's, it's something beautiful. Obviously, the design has to be approved. It's not gonna be like, just a free-for-all where people could just do whatever they want on the shells. Like if a business wants to do something, it just, it has to go with the guidelines, that it's just respectful and like,
And do I understand this, you want to move them around periodically
Well-
over years? I don't know that.
we may do that. We were gonna donate them to, we were gonna donate them to the people, like all these places. So we were hoping those would stay, because those are like places that should never leave. But let's just say a business was moving location or leaving, or they're like, I'm closing my business, we don't need this shell anymore. Hopefully they would give it to someone else who could then utilize the shell, so it's not just, thrown away.
Right.
Will they have the PSEG plate on them?
So we were told that they will have the PSEG plate on all of them. I know there's an issue with that because of,
Yeah.
with the town. I can talk to PSEG about that. Kelly Lanino, one of our board members, had been dealing directly with PSEG on that, but I can find out. I'm not sure if she ever got an answer back about that. If they require that we have the PSEG line, then we would have to pay for those shells out of pocket to give to you guys.
Okay.
So
'Cause
that,
the issues that parks had with them were they wouldn't put them in the parks with the PSEG plate on them because we don't allow any advertising in our
Right.
parks.
right.
The other issue they had was they did not want to be responsible for vandalism,
Right.
for any damage done to them, and if they did deteriorate, or
Right.
that the chamber would come and remove them.
Right. So we don't have, if there's something that happens to them, we don't have a problem removing them.
Okay.
I can't say that we can maintain them. Like, I'm not saying like we'll come out there. One of our board members had said, well, every 2 years we'll change the painting. I'm like, that's a huge undertaking that I'm not willing to do. So if they want to do that, that's fine. I want nothing to do with it. Because it's just, that's a lot to move all these shells, to get them like primed and painted and sanded and whatever it may be. But like if something were to happen, like let's say it got vandalized or damaged, then I don't see a problem with like, I mean, they're very light. Like they're not like, I would hope that somebody wouldn't do that. Like a place like Good Ground, if it was put there, ideally I would like to put it in the eye of the camera that's there, just so that if something did happen to it, hopefully there would be, consequences, so it wasn't.
And that was the other thing that Parks wanted to have the ability to, if we did allow them in the parks, to Parks as the ultimate say on where they go.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, like, we just want to get them out there. Like, we're not picky. We just want them to be in a spot that's people can see. Like, we don't want them to put them, like, over in the woods, hidden somewhere where nobody can see it. But, like, just somewhere. And we want to make sure that it's in a place where hopefully less vandalism will happen. But, yeah. And like I said, if there's something that happens to it, I mean, literally, I could get one of the people that I know to go over there and grab it out of the ground and throw it in the back of their truck.
Okay.
So,
Probably when PSCG gave the grant that they had conditions set forth
To have
as
their
to
plan.
what can be done with them and.
well, they said we gave them the whole presentation and we told, like, they got basically the same presentation. So there was a different one that was sent out, I want to say probably, no, it had to be longer than that. I would say last fall. Do you remember seeing that? I think it was a different way that it was set up. It was a different format than like this is more so being a letter. But it was a different way that was set up, and it said in there, all that was sent to PSAG. So they agreed with it. Basically, they're giving us the shells to do this to bring the local support. So the only thing is they would have a plaque on them. Like it would say, if it was at your location, Good Ground Park, let's just use for example, Good Ground Park, Hampton Bays Chamber of Commerce, and then the PSAG. I think what I can do is ask them. Oh, sorry.
Does it say donated by PSEG or what? Like what?
I think
or does
it's-
it just say PSEG?
I think it just says PSEG. I'm not sure about how I haven't seen any of the plaques. They haven't made them yet.
Don't we have events at our parks?
We do,
Where don't we have events at our parks where there are sponsors that advertise?
Yes, to sponsor events in the park. So
Right.
this is different because like we had the Flanders Riverside Northampton sign that was donated by Geico. Geico was not permitted to put their name anywhere on that sign. And that was a condition of them donating it to Franca, was that they would not have their name anywhere on it.
Quick question about that though, and this is just, and I'm not trying to like question anything, I just want to know for my own reference. Because PSEG is a one and only, because there is no other way to get power out here besides PSEG, I
Correct.
wonder if maybe they would be lenient, because like Geico is an insurance company, so there's lots of other insurance companies, so it is a way to advertise. But I feel like with PSEG, it's not so much an advertisement, because there's no other, it's like Cablevision, there's
Yeah.
no other option
They
out
just
here.
felt
Still
like
a
it
company.
commercializes it, and when you get into,
Oh,
like, Good
the-
Ground is
the
also a
CPF,
CPF
yeah.
property.
So that's why, okay. No, I just wanted a better understanding about it, just because, that way I can go back to them and explain to them, this is why we can't do
Yeah.
this, or we can do this.
Council, is the code clear on that with respect to advertising?
I'd actually have to review that. I was just thinking maybe LIPR might be a little more reasonable because they're actually the government entity. PSEG is a private company that
Works for LIPA, right?
LIPA, right, but.
Right.
But I'll have to look exactly
That
on it.
make- I mean, that might
certainly
make
other
sense.
towns and parks, state parks and everything have expanded where they do allow advertising.
Yeah, the
I'm not sure,
towns-
we'll have to look at the code.
I mean,
whether it's-
when I spoke to Parks, they kind of felt like it's a slippery slope, they don't want to go down. and-
Right, I mean, I think that's probably more an administrative decision than
Yeah.
anything else. But
And
I
I
don't know
could
if there's
talk to
anything in the
them
code that specifically
And
prohibits it,
Fred,
but-
because I think Fred deals a lot with the CPF funds, correct? And I know they were talking about redoing some, like, parameters, I guess you would say, with the
It's not necessarily
Yeah.
CPF, because this is our town.
oh, the
parks.
town,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Okay, because when we had spoken to them, they were on board with it. So this is like the first time hearing about this, so.
On board with the project.
With
but
the
maybe
project of the
concern
shells.
was always
Then,
the-
until they
The
found out they didn't know there was a
plaque.
plaque on it.
Okay, so maybe that's what it was, because they were on that. So I mean, there's ways I can talk, like I said, I haven't had direct contact with PSEG, Kelly's been dealing with that. but I can try to find out. I know when we asked them about that, there wasn't a response, so maybe they're waiting to get a response from the other people. But it's just, like I said, I mean, there's parameters, we can work around it. I can't, like, we would have to buy more shells, which we don't have a problem doing. I mean, it's a huge expense for the chamber, as a nonprofit. But because it's so important to us to have them in these locations, because that's what we're known for, is our beaches and our beautiful parks and everything like that.
Since there were conversations, Cindy, that you had with Parks about some reservations on, the plaque being present, were there conversations that suggested that if the shells had no plaque on it, that it would be better?
Yeah, they wouldn't
preferable?
they wouldn't have that was the main
Was the
issue,
plaque.
was that we don't allow generally advertising. Yes, we had, like, Stony Brook Southampton has sponsored concerts in the park, but it's an event, it's not
It's
a
not
plaque
per-
in the park
permanent.
that has
Right.
a.
So would maybe PSCG, and I don't know if this is possible, would PSCG be, willing to remove the plaques and maybe do some sort of press conference with your chamber?
Which is what Geico did.
Right, having like an unveiling of all the different, locations of the shells.
Right.
And they can kind of say, we helped sponsor this, and
Yeah.
it could be more of a PR thing rather than a permanent plaque on all of the different things.
Because every other one could have the plaque on it, right? And then people will associate, maybe they'll just think the plaque fell off or whatever it may be, or maybe we just put the name of the park. Because we would want the chamber, name on it as well, because that's like, it's our project. So it's like, and we don't get anything out of it. But we are actually sponsoring the Parks and Rec concert at the beach, the first one on July 1st. So we were hoping to get that one shell done so we could do the unveiling the same day as the concert. And I had reached out about fireworks because some of the board thought about that, but I'm never doing fireworks.
So it may require a conversation with PSEG if they would be willing to, remove the plaques and then maybe
Press event.
in response have a, a press event instead.
Yeah,
To sort of
100%.
unveil it if that might suit them.
That's what Geico did. They brought the duck. It was like-
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, I mean, like, I am 100%, because we want to
Well,
do
it's
something
up.
to thank them as
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
show, I mean, they are a local power company, but without them, nobody's gonna be happy. So we need to let people know that, they are supporting the community, they are giving back.
Maybe it's possible, since they haven't made the plaques yet, as far as we know.
Right, we haven't made any plaques yet, because
Okay.
we're waiting to get the shells to make sure that the plaques are done properly and
What about the
everything.
painting? Who's gonna paint them?
So we have an agreement with the local schools right now, but the shells were supposed to arrive earlier. They got delayed, so now they're not arriving till later. So they arrived May 18th, but that only gives the kids like 1 month. And a lot of them have like regions and other exams and stuff like that. We don't want it to be a rushed process. So I was hoping that they could work on the one for Ponquag Beach, and then it could pick back up in the fall. The lady at the school that we've been working with has been amazing, Keegan. And so, she's been super helpful. And I don't know if they can be painted over the summer, but let's just say you guys wanted them up. Then we could try to see if we can find other local artists. I know like Carolyn Manuko, I think. Yes, that's.
And she also does separate programs, and she may be able to get other artists.
Right,
To do
100%.
like,
Because that's what I would love to do, that to get like local. We want to make sure this is a local project. Like I don't. Of course, we can ship them out to somewhere in like Bohemia or somewhere and get them painted. And then we want to keep it local, like more personal, where somebody can be, wow, I painted that shell, or somebody
Yeah.
can recognize the name, because we would also put the name on the plaque of the person who painted it, just so that way it's a recognition.
And it's also establishing and strengthening Hamlet identity, which I think is important, and bringing the community together through that. So
Exactly, and it's like an Instagram thing. Like we created our guidebooks, and I take them to the Welcome Center, the airports, like the West Hampton and Islip Airport, and then we drop them whenever I go up to Vermont or anything. I drop them at the rest stops so that people come from out of town to come to Hampton Bays, and I think this is a fun thing. Like if we can start seeing this and people are like, oh, this is kind of a cool thing to do. We may be staying in Southampton, but let's go, see if we can find the shell. I mean, I don't know. I have a child. I think it might be fine for some people. Or maybe they've had too many drinks and they want to wander around walking and find the shells. I don't know,
Scallops are part of their heritage. I remember purchasing them from Ed Warner Sr.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Shinnecock Bay produces scallops. And, scallops are still in Moriches
Peconic.
Bay, and, well,
Not Peconic so much, but in
well,
Mauritius,
the,
right?
the population collapsed in the Peconic Bays, and they're looking to reseed Peconic Bays with Moriches Bay scallops.
Oh, wow.
You know, they think that there's something there, but I think this is great. I totally support the scallop concept.
Thank you.
And should be noted, it is our state shellfish,
Oh,
It's also on the trustee
and
logo.
it's up there.
oh, look at that. I'll be like, that's where we got it from. No.
Well,
Don't tell them that.
I'm just kidding. I would not.
It,
I had
it
enough
was
with
it was a real money crop. And really, what we're doing, you know, to mitigate nitrogen in our waters is in part to bring back oysters and clams and
Clams.
scallops. I mean,
Especially in Peconic because of the issues they've had.
so this is good.
Thank you.
Well, we did just have a resident here at our last meeting that asked about murals in Hampton Bays on the buildings. So
Oh.
this is,
Well,
you know,
this
an
is kind of a
interesting.
start.
And it's funny, because when you brought this up, I do remember you bringing this up last year at one of the CAC meetings, I think. And when you said scavenger hunt and scallop shells, I was thinking like in East Quogue, we have EQ rocks. And
Right. And
kids
people
paint
paint them
rocks and they leave them
around,
places.
which is so cool.
And then I didn't realize it was a 4-foot.
Yeah, it's
scallop
a giant.
shell.
It's a giant shell, and it's kind of like if you look up Dunedin, Florida, you'll see around there. It's by Clearwater, Florida. It's on the west coast, but if you look up Dunedin, Florida oranges, you'll get a whole thing. I mean, people pay this guy like $3,000 to paint an orange on the side of their house, and then downtown they have oranges on everything, and it's like a fun thing to see. It's like, and so maybe this will become a thing where we'll get a local artist, or people want, you know, a scallop shell painted on the side of their house. I mean, I don't know. That's a little more Florida than New York, but
Yeah.
Know what else you can do?
what's that?
You can have a scallop chowder contest.
Well, we used to do that. We used to do the chili chowder contest at the Bordy Barn, or now the Barnyard. But the problem is that, like when we took over the chamber in 2022, we had 11 members. So my job as the president was to get more membership. We got it up to 165 members. So
Good
it's
job.
been really
That's
strong. And, it's just a lot to take on the chili chowder because like with the health department and
It
everything
is.
like that. And plus because the businesses, they're not, you know, after COVID, like they just didn't, it was hard to ask them to donate the
Yeah,
chili or the
yeah.
chowder. But I think it would be an awesome idea. I mean, to have like some kind of, we've toyed with the idea, and if there's some way, we could make it happen, I think it would be like an
You
awesome.
probably have to use sea scallops.
Right, we would have to
Yeah.
use sea scallops. I mean, it would be, you know, but a scallop tasting, you know, this person could do
Yeah.
like fried scallops, or seared scallops, you know,
Yeah.
blackened,
I
whatever
love
maybe.
scallops.
Like,
Are you thinking this is a permanent donation or a temporary installation? Like for a couple of years, or you're just
Until
donating
they-
one period?
nope, they are yours. And then until they meet their demise, like a
And-
crazy storm
And
or
the only
something.
other thing, if you're gonna put them on Main Street in the right of way, sidewalks,
Oh, no.
Okay,
No,
that's
they
very
wouldn't be able to
careful.
impede sidewalk, because our
Right.
sidewalks in Main Street are very
Very
much
small.
smaller than
Yeah.
regular ones, and we need to make sure they're accessible for people to be able to get past them. Like, we were thinking maybe Canusio Park, like Pocket Park there, putting one like over by the beautiful hydrangeas or something like that. We had toyed with the idea of putting one at our old chamber building site, where the old chamber building used to be. It doesn't get a lot of foot traffic over there, and I think it might not be the best location for it, because there's nobody to really watch it per se. So I think we may change that one out and do like another location. But we're hoping that this picks up, and you know, we've had other business members excited about them. Like they're like, "Well, can I buy one?" And we're like, "Not yet. We just have
I
to
see
get."
like rumba and cowfish.
Right,
and-
exactly. Like they have the big giant chair, and they could have their shell next to it, you know, something
Yeah.
like that. So I feel like a lot of the restaurants will probably be on board. Edgewater has a perfect, like beautiful gardens that Pondmaster did out there. They could put the giant shell out there. You know, it's just.
And you're in
there's-
communication with these businesses, right?
Oh, 100%.
So, yeah,
Yep,
it's
we're
great.
actually having our annual meeting tonight, which you all, I know you can't have more than three people, right? To come, but
Quorum.
Two.
Three members are a quorum.
quorum, because I was gonna say, if you want to come, anybody who would like to come, it's from 6 to 9 at the American Legion.
We're able
we
to
can
go
have
if as long as it's not dealing with policy.
Right.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like, it's just gonna be, there's gonna be a
Right.
taco truck there,
That's
there's
awesome.
gonna be a DJ.
Yeah, you
so
can
you're
eat tacos
welcome.
together if you want.
Yes,
just
and
to-
it's just to
we can
learn
have a
about the
quorum.
chamber, we're gonna talk about the shells, and just to like, I'm gonna do a 10-minute speech about the things that we've done and what we're gonna plan to do.
And just as far as the PSEG plaque is concerned, I don't mean to backtrack, but
no,
I mean, if some of these are are going to businesses, I don't think the PSEG plaque is a.
No, that's fine.
That's
and-
fine.
And that's
No,
what I
oh,
think.
100%.
Is it,
Yeah.
would it be
Right.
possible for you to give the PSEG ones to the businesses and have them buy one for another location?
Well, that's what we were thinking about doing. If I can sell, I just have to make sure we do it above board, because I don't want to do anything that might be like, shady, for lack of a better term. So what I think we
No,
might
you
do.
can have them
Not allowed
donate
to
one
sell
to
them.
the
We
town
wouldn't
for
want
the
that
park.
either.
Right, well, what I think what we would probably do is I would pull these out of here, give them, use that money for paint, because it was for materials and shells. Use that money for paint, and then pull those other shells out, and then we could purchase them, and then give them to you guys, because I can't sell them to a business, and then it's like, it just wouldn't work. Like, if I sell them to a business and I have that sale, then I couldn't use them as one of these shells. So I would use this as like getting the plaque money, getting the paint, everything like that, and then
A business couldn't buy one for the town?
Oh, you mean a business could buy one to donate to the town? Oh, 100%. Like, we could get,
And then you can give them the PSEG shell.
is that
I don't
is that
know.
above board?
Could you
I
do
don't
that?
know.
You're giving them a shell and they're buying
As long
one to
as it's
donate to the
not-
town.
That doesn't have a plaque.
As long as you're not selling it.
Because they can't
them.
sell the
I'm
ones
sure
with the
PSEG
PSEG
said you
plaques.
can't sell
So I
it.
said, can they
Yes,
give
we
those
can
to a
sell it
business
then.
and then have the
But we
business
could maybe do a
buy one to
swap.
donate to the
I
town
just
that
don't-
doesn't
I
have
just wanna,
plaque
I
on it?
would wanna ask and make sure.
It
we
sounds like
don't-
you should bring PSEG into the conversation.
Right.
And
What
see
you
what
do.
they're willing
Yeah,
to do.
and see if they'll just do a press event.
Yeah, and do something like that,
And just,
because.
the plaques are not gonna be cheap either, so.
No, well, exactly, and that's the thing, is like, if we could just get this, put together, we just wanted to get it approved by you all before, like, honestly, I do all this legwork, and then they're like, just kidding, we're not gonna do this, so,
And
but,
then there's no expectation that the town would replace them if they become damaged.
no,
which
I'm
is-
hoping
we'll
that.
probably have, we'll have a little agreement to
Well-
just set forth the donation and what's the expectations are.
Right, the only thing is that they, basically though, like, let's just say it does get damaged, we will come and take it away. But it's gonna be your shell, so it's like, it has nothing to do with the chamber, it's like, we're giving it to you, it's like if I gave you a sweater, here's your sweater, I'm not gonna like, come take your sweater away, but it's just, it's a gift to the town. And then, like, if it comes down to the point where it does need to be painted, like if it starts chipping, it starts looking like really bad, then we're gonna have to reevaluate and take it back and figure out, maybe put it back to the schools. But they, like, a lot of these things, because I've seen them around, these giant structures, there's a couple houses in Hampton Bays that have them from the same place, and theirs are outside all the time, and they don't seem to be chipped. I mean, I haven't walked in the person's yard to like really examine them, but they seem to be in great condition, so I think as long as they're sealed with maybe like polyurethane or something like that, that may, extend their life, span,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Well, I
So.
think that you can tell everybody's in favor of it, so if you
think it's
can
a good
just
idea.
work out that,
The plaque
matter
thing.
with the plaques, and we can draft up an agreement and.
Right. Well, that would be great. We would
Yeah.
appreciate it. And like either way, so what I think I would like to do for the meantime is pull these out. We can figure the thing, pull these out and give them to you. Like pull them out of the here, just take them out of our thing. We'll give them to you and we'll either pay for them now and then do the whole business swap thing later. But I feel like that way, because we want the locations like the beach and stuff like that, we want those done first. Just because that's gonna bring the most foot traffic, more people go to the beach than anywhere else in Hampton Bays. So, well, maybe Cowfish too, but.
On the
Or
back
something.
of them, you can put a map
Well, that's not mine.
where the other ones are. On the
Well,
back.
that would be the idea, so we were gonna create like, kind of like one of those little maps, and it'll be like spot, 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 spot.
On the back of
Put a
the shell.
QR code on it.
Oh, in the back of the shell, oh yeah, the QR code, that's what we had talked about, the back of
Yeah.
the shell. That's a good idea, the QR code with the map, we were gonna create like a physical map online.
Yeah.
That people could see that, and it's another way to advertise businesses too, so.
Yeah.
So I will get the PSEG, but we will, do these locations look good? I mean, I was thinking mainly these 5, the Maritime Park, Tiana, Pocket Park, Good Ground, and Ponquag. As the historical buildings, that's town property too, right? Or is that different if we were to donate
The
the
Liaison
historical?
Hat Shop.
Which is,
That's,
oh, yeah,
that's.
that's.
But that's-
Community Preservation Fund, Southampton.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town
Yeah, it
owns
might
that.
be.
Oh, so we wouldn't be able to put the PSEG there either?
Probably
The town-owned
not.
properties, yeah.
Probably not.
Liaison is
Yeah.
town-owned property.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And
Okay,
that's something we can talk about. I don't know if there's a specific restriction in the code, but it's something the board will have to talk about whether the.
yeah, so
moving
maybe
forward.
if you guys wanna have like a private discussion about that, and then you can come back to me with like whatever is the right answer.
Right.
And then that way I know what to do for this, and then I can see how many, cause for us to pull out 9 of these, that's like a huge expense for us, so, but like I said, we want them to just be.
I would reach
seen.
out to PSEG first and ask
Yeah.
if they would deal with the press event.
Yeah, and then.
And
pull
give them the reasoning why.
Yeah.
I
'cause
think
then-
that that's the best way to go too.
Yeah.
And then we would still be able to have like the location name and the
And you'll
chamber
have it, you'll have
name.
it on your website with the map of all the shells and that
Right,
they were
and it'll be
donated by
shown by
PSEG.
PSEG, everything like that.
That's how to do it. That's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
Put it on the website.
And we would definitely, like we do, East End Getaway gives us some money along with Discover Long Island, so all of our guidebooks on the front of there have that. And so what we could do is put something about the shell in there, generously donated, so everybody who picks up that book
Yeah.
sees that, because the book's going to print next week, so maybe I'll just see if we can put something like that in there too. So, all right, perfect.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much for taking the
you.
time
Thank
to meet
you.
with me. I
Thank you for
appreciate
doing
it.
this.
So we'll touch base, I guess, then you let me know when you have your answer. I'll let you know with my answer, and then,
Well, let us know when you reach out to PSEG
PSEG.
and how they feel about the PR.
right,
Approach.
perfect. I think what I'll do is I'll call Kelly and see if she can set up a call, because I feel like it's easier to explain than me try to like
Yeah, yeah.
write it all
You have,
out,
you have
so.
good contact over there, like PSCG?
I don't.
I can give you.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I can.
Oh,
give
that
you-
would be one. Do you have my email?
We could
I
get
can
it to.
get- I have
we
it.
could get
Oh,
it
you
to-
can give it to?
Just send it to, yeah.
Okay, perfect. If you could give me that contact, that would be amazing, because that would be
Yeah.
half the battle, and then I can just give them a call directly,
Right.
so.
We have some of the
Alright.
government liaison
That-
people that we deal with all, that
Oh,
I deal with quite a
perfect.
bit, so.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep.
yeah.
So,
Chris Hahn,
all right, well, thank you again. I hope you guys have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for
you
doing
too.
you're
this.
welcome. My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Thank you for your patience. Now we're going to hear from an assessment update from our tax assessor, Lisa Gorey, and we also have Robert Wallum, Regional Manager of the Office of Real Property Tax
the
Services.
state can
I believe John is gonna be on Zoom. He had car trouble this morning, so he wasn't able to trek down from upstate. So this is James Perini. He's my deputy assessor. So
Hi,
I have him
James.
joining me
Hi.
This morning.
And congratulations again.
Thank
Assessor?
you. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for having us this morning. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give you an overview of how we started the reassessment in '04, fast forward to where we are now, and then I'll just do the short slide presentation that I have. I didn't want to take up too much time doing the presentation, of course, because I know probably have a lot of questions, so I think it's best that we have more of a discussion. And I guess you guys can just pass these out. This is actually the slide presentation. So, in 2002, the town had actually contracted with Cole, Layer, and Trumbull, CLT. They were a reassessment consulting group out of
Could you
Ohio.
just
Yes.
Not all
Pause
over.
for 1 minute,
Yes.
please. There's
We were
a lot of shuffling of papers.
Okay.
Is everybody all set now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Proceed.
So in 2002, the town had actually contracted with Cole, Layer, and Trumbull. They were a consultant reassessment group out of Ohio. And they came in and they brought on several, of their support staff. They analyzed 5 years' worth of our sales. They sent out data mailers to all of the property owners just to confirm the inventory that we had on their property was correct. They also sent out information to all the commercial property owners requesting their INE income statements. So once they received all that information, they did the sales analysis, they compiled all of that data, and in 2004, birthed the reassessment. And we were at 100% value. I was here during that term. However, I was not the assessor. I actually oversaw a lot of the inventory collection for the reassessment. So, since 2004 up until 2019, my staff and I, we were able to maintain the town's assessment at 100% market value, which annually that entailed us providing New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services with quarterly sales reports, and then an annual sales report that was due to the state every September. And then what they did with that sales information was they compared our sales to our assessments to see what the ratio was. They determined, yes, you are within 100%. There was also a tolerance, which they allow you 5%. So if we weren't at 100, we could be, at 95, or we could be at 105, and that was acceptable to the state.
And there's a grant that comes along with that for municipalities that do that. They get some money from the state.
Yes, so every 3 years, maintaining the 100% value, we were awarded money from the state for maintaining 100% reassessments, and I believe it was somewhere in the amount of like $2 to $3 a parcel. I think it was like maybe 100,000, somewhere along those lines.
Is that, did you say every 3 years we
Every
would get
3
that?
years we would get, so it wouldn't be
Once every
every
3
year.
years?
Once every 3 years, we would be, eligible to receive those funds from the state.
About $100,000.
It was about 100,000, yes.
And that was to just maintain.
Just maintaining it, so it was sort of like, they rewarded us for maintaining 100%. And of course, that money went back into, our budget. We, purchased pictometry in order to continue with the aerial imagery. So then, 2019, the former town supervisor, Mr. Schneiderman, decided to put a hold on reassessments.
Sorry, what year was that?
2019.
2019.
So we put a hold on the reassessments, and a group was formed that Mr. Schneiderman put together, which consisted of realtors. I believe we had, the tax receiver was involved, someone from the comptroller's office was involved. So it was just to take a look at the process and then see whether or not there could be any legislation that would help us continuing with the reassessments. Fred Thiel was contacted. So any of the proposed ideas that were put forth, of course, had to go through state legislation, which we did attempt to, which did not, was not in our
And there were two
favor.
proposals. What were
Yes.
those two proposals?
So we had one proposal was to create an exemption, sort of like the STAR exemption, where any person who was receiving the STAR and was a full-time resident of the town would be entitled to an exemption.
We call that the homestead.
The homestead, yes.
Exemption.
Yes. So any exemption that the town wanted to propose would have to be first approved by New York State. So that's when Fred, came involved. He, wrote the legislation. I don't believe that went anywhere. And then we also did look at the homestead, actually itself, which Southampton Town did not qualify for the homestead because we have some of our parcels lie in the East Hampton side of town, which are the Sag Harbor Village, some of the Sag Harbor Village parcels. So we were not able to go that route either. So, in the interim.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Because we provide assessments for the village of Sag Harbor and
Yeah, it had
40%
something-
of the village is
Yeah, it had some-
located in the
yes,
town of East
yeah,
Hampton, we
yeah.
did not qualify?
Yes. Yes, it did not. Yep.
Go on.
So, fast forward from there.
So the assessments were frozen as of 2019.
2019, they were frozen.
That means we didn't take any sales information in either, nothing?
We still had to conduct our sales analysis. We still had to send that information to New York State because it was a requirement that we provide them with our sales so that they could in turn do their analysis and let us know whether or not we were still at 100%.
But we weren't doing aerial imagery?
We were not doing that. We were not doing anything that would consist of us changing assessments other than physical changes.
Like building permit applications, like building
Yes,
permit, yeah.
yep. We went
After
out on
2019.
permits after 2019, yes. So in doing a reassessment, some of the things that you can change, you can update your land
Before we
tables.
go on, there was another initiative that we had brought to the state about not increasing the assessment more than 5%.
More than 5%, that's
And-
correct.
Right, so that was, we had two suggestions for the state that we
Right.
asked for permissive legislation on, and it didn't get out of
That did not
committee.
go anywhere as well,
Okay.
yes.
So the
yes.
idea was that we would,
That we would do it in increments.
Right.
We would increase assessments, say, 5% one year, then 5% another, until we actually caught up to where the assessments would be at 100%.
What is
That-
it right now?
But that's not what was going on in 2019, because we
We-
weren't
we didn't
behind with
do
the
it.
assessment.
Right, we did
Yeah.
not, we did not do that. We couldn't
Right.
do it.
All right, so
The
maybe
reason
you
why
could
we-
just take it forward
well,
what you're
if I
doing.
could, because I was here, and
Mm-hmm.
the reason why we put the freeze in place, because there were some homeowners that, through no action of their own, just because they live in a certain neighborhood, they were getting large increases in their tax assessment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When we were going with 100% assessment. So we wanted to take a look at it, and those are the two proposals that we came up with, and that we proposed to the state that didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That didn't go anywhere.
Then the pandemic happened.
Exactly.
And so, go on.
Right.
Bill, did you have
That's an
a-
important
Yep.
piece, because
What else-
we didn't just make this up. There were people who were very concerned about their assessment and taxes being increased, and they did nothing to their house. But their neighbors sold their house for a very high number. And so their taxes went up, based on our reassessments.
Their assessments went
Okay.
up,
Because
Go
the
on,
value
thank
of
you.
their property increased.
increased correctly, yes.
Bill?
Yeah, congratulations.
I mean, it's
Oh,
important
what
to
are
know
we
that
at now?
that
Bill's
doesn't
got a
always happen.
question.
So our assessments are currently at 69% of market value, 69.5%.
That's the
Of
current,
market
that's the
value.
current.
That's our current equalization rate, that's our current level of assessment.
But could you keep on that path that where you're explaining what happened over
Yes.
the years, just so we
Yes,
are
so in
fully informed?
2019, we froze the assessments.
Mhm.
2020 came pandemic. We were still able to maintain 100% market value in 2020 on that assessment roll because the sales that we analyzed were based on the sales that occurred the year before. So the sales that were occurring from July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 were the sales that we were looking at for that 2020 assessment roll. So we were able to maintain 100% market value in 2021 and in 2020 and in 2021. So in 2022, we were now going to have to look at the sales that were occurring in the latter part of 2020 and 2021. In doing that analysis, we were now behind by as much as 50%. So we had homes that we had assessed at 500,000 that according to the market should really be close to 800,000, maybe even $1 million in assessed value.
So like 30 to 50%, you're saying it
Yeah.
was
So that's
behind.
how we fell behind by that much. So of course, the supervisor at that time, Mr. Schneiderman said, no way are we gonna do a reassessment in
It was a board
2022.
decision, all of these. It wasn't just
So,
Mr. Schneider.
yes, it was the board's
Okay, this
decision,
came
yes, to not
to
do a
this table.
reassessment because everyone's assessment at that time probably could have increased anywhere between that 30 to 50.
And that was discovered in 22.
That was discovered in 2022.
And was there a level of assessment percentage that was determined? not yet?
Our level of assessment was 79.
79.
79%.
And
yes.
there was
At that
actually
time.
an analysis by Hamlet at that time that was sent to
Yes,
us.
so what we did was, we hired a reassessment consultant group out of Nassau County. And what they did was, along with Jim. He was also part of that. They were analyzing our sales by neighborhood. So we were looking to see what is the ratio I believe we started with like North Haven, Sagaponack, and then we started working our way down. And the analysis was showing that a lot of our assessments were at least 30 to 50% ratio.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, when you were here for our work session in 2022, it was pretty much like, you need to do this next year, your window is just getting greater and greater, and we're gonna be too far out to
Right.
ever catch up.
Right. So that's why
Are we at that
now-
tipping point now?
So
Yes.
in
We've hit
2022.
the iceberg.
I'll get to
We
that.
were-
Oh my gosh.
We were, in 2022, the equalization rate or the level of assessment was at 79. So now here we are, 2024. Our 2023 equalization rate, as I said, was 69.5. Based on the analysis that Mr. Woolen provided to me in February, our level of assessment is now going to be about 63%.
Well, this
So
year.
it's, yes,
And then-
for the assessment roll coming out in next month.
And we
And-
didn't,
and
and we
next-
didn't just say we weren't gonna reassess because we didn't wanna do it. It was also not in the budget to reassess. We didn't have the
Still
funding
isn't.
that we needed to reassess, even if we'd wanted to at that point. We were looking at it, we would have had to have budgeted that year for the following year.
Well, we were doing it in-house, myself and my staff. But if we were to because we were so far behind, we would have to bring in a reassessment company to do it, yes, and we did not have the budget to do that. And if we were to do that now, to start planning for a possible reassessment, which probably wouldn't be available until 2027 because of all of the research and analysis that has to go into it. In 2022, that reassessment cost to the town was 1.9 million. And that did include support services for the reassessment, the year of the reassessment, plus a couple of years beyond that. So that cost, of course, today would depend on, what support services we would like for them to continue with the town.
And that would take about 3 years, you would estimate?
Yes, at least 2 years, possibly more, depending on,
In another 3 years, we could be down in the 50s.
No, but we have to start now.
Do you know how many
Possibly.
towns are at 100% valuation?
In Suffolk County right now, Shelter Island, I believe that is the only town in Suffolk County that is at 100%. Upstate is where they have more of the, the towns that conduct the annual reassessment.
And how many towns do 100% market value evaluation on an annual basis in the state of New York? Roughly, I mean.
A handful. Not many.
Not
Right,
many.
I think there were like 5.
Yeah, it's
What-
And we were
what-
included, of 900, this is an important point, 923 towns in the state, and 5 do it. So a question that I'd like to hear, and us to discuss, what are the advantages of doing this?
I'll get to that in my
Yeah.
presentation.
And what is the average of the level of assessment typically amongst
It
municipalities?
ranges from 20 to 100. It's all different depending on the location.
So we're
Yeah.
not in a unique situation?
It depends. Riverhead, I believe, is at maybe 0.63, something like that. It depends on what so the equalization rate is determined by your actual sales compared to the assessments. And it's an aggregate. The state actually looks at all of our sales, all of our assessments. But if we were to look at it on an individual basis, you have a sale that occurred, and the sale came in at 3 million, yet they're only assessed at 1 million. So
Right.
their ratio would actually be less
Sure.
than what the aggregate 69.5 right now. We have some sales, I was just looking at this study the other day. We have properties where the ratio is actually at 30%. because over, the last 3-4 years, we just keep getting further and further away.
Can you explain a little bit about how the disparity is occurring now with the new construction, so that the new homes are being taxed at the lower rate, whereas, because we can't assess them
Right,
at the
because-
100%, right?
Right.
So now the new, say, big
Right,
house
so
goes
in doing a reassessment, we have the ability to update our cost tables based on, what the price per square foot is to construct a new home. So we can update our cost tables that, in this neighborhood, the price is, $200 a square foot, or maybe in this neighborhood, it's $500 a square foot. Without doing a reassessment, we're not able to do that. So now we have houses that are being built that are actually, their price per square foot is probably what it was in 2019. So those houses are really being underassessed, whereas the houses that were constructed in 2019, they also need to have, their quality needs to be changed in their data, the condition of the house, depreciation, all of that stuff, we are not able to change unless we do a reassessment. Right now, the only changes we can make in our system are physical changes, what's being built. And then again, what's being built is
Can you
not.
adjust that without going to 100% valuation?
We cannot.
No.
It's
You can't do
considered a reassessment adjustment.
You can't apply the market changes.
Right, you cannot apply
I just-
anything to do with.
I
market.
remember standing vividly. I remember standing on the line at St. Rosalie's when it went to 100% valuation, with the masses of people that were seniors, that were people that hadn't touched their homes, had unimproved lots that were just. They were like, I don't know how I'm going to afford this, and I was on that line, and I got declined, and so I come from having the experience of lived to going to 100% valuation. And I understand, the whole pizza analogy, and I understand the basis for it. I just, without safeguards in it for our seniors and for people that really just are gonna get hammered because of where they live and not what they have, is just,
I'll answer that a little bit. The seniors are getting hammered right now under the current system of equalization. They're getting hit both ways. The first way is the exemptions that they get from their senior citizen and veterans and all that. They're only getting a portion of the 100% that they're entitled to because of equalization. Our equalization this year is gonna be 63%, meaning they're only getting 63% of their exemptions. Okay, so that's a lot of money, first of all,
63% of the 50%.
of the 100% they're entitled, yes, of whatever the current rate is.
Right.
But no, they're only getting 63%. The second is, and I'll get to it in my presentation, is that they tend to live in the lower to middle class areas. And as we just talked about, the really high areas with the building rates and everything else, a lot of those homes are 50% under assessed, homes selling for 20, 30, $40 million. Okay, and who makes up for that? The little guy
Wait,
over
could you
here.
repeat that? I'm sorry. I was
The
just-
high end of the town, the big sales, the over 5 million, they're all under assessed by vast amounts of money. Sometimes it's 50%, so something sells for 30 million, we have it assessed for 15. Now,
Right.
someone has to make up for that.
And the working class is
The
doing
working-
it.
Okay, the families, the seniors, they're all being over assessed
Yeah.
because they have to pay.
Right.
Under 100%.
'Cause I've
This
heard-
doesn't happen.
And
And
those are
forgive me
generally
forgive
in
me for
Eastern-
sorry, just hold on one second, Tommy John. Because I've heard folks that live in North Sea, that live in Hampton Bays, that live in Noyak, who don't have very extravagant homes. They seem to feel as if they're overpaying taxes, and folks with larger homes, say in, I don't know, Sagaponack, Bridgehampton, or something, that they have a lower tax rate that they're paying. And I know school district has something to do with that, and I think that's something we all need to
lot to do
consider.
A lot to do.
A
Yeah.
lot to do it.
But there is something to be said in the inequity within the current assessment rate that is causing them to feel a certain way, as if they are paying more than other folks.
I'll give you an example. Let's say an area in Sagaponack, we see it in a year go up 40% in sales. That's what the market is showing. And let's say the seniors in Hampton Bays, their area goes up 5%. Now, in 100% market value, in Sagaponack, we adjust it to 50% or 40%, whatever the sales show, And in Hampton Bays, for the seniors or wherever, it's 5%. That's the market. In equalization, what we have now is we say, we're just gonna take a blanket number for the entire town at, say, 30%. So now the big guy is going to be completely underassessed, and the seniors in Hampton Bays, they're now saying, well, my area went up 5%, but now I'm going up 30%. So you're just averaging everybody together, and then you're gonna have outliers on both sides.
Yeah. it
Which is
seems that
fine
the-
for the this is an important point, and
The
really,
ta- the
like,
town
one of the,
taxes.
that's fine for the town taxes,
Yep.
which is about, I don't know, less than 20% of the aggregate, but it does not affect their local school taxes.
Correct.
So the person in Hampton Bays will not, or ever, be affected by the home sales in Sagaponic.
Oh, right,
I mean,
correct.
what you say is correct.
Right.
I'm not disputing any of that, but the lion's share of taxes, property taxes paid goes to the school
Okay,
districts.
well, I could use the same example for areas of Hampton Bays. I could use the same, just take one school district. You're gonna find the same thing. Take Southampton School District. You're gonna find $10 million
So
sales.
some of the higher-end homes
Yeah,
on the
so
water in
I-
Hampton
I
Bays,
was- yeah,
you're,
so you're
okay.
correct too.
So,
So yes,
Yeah.
but we could use that same example for every single school district. Makes no difference. Now, what's bad about this in equalization is it's compounded every year. So let's just say one area of Hampton Bays continues to go up 10% every year for 5 years, and the other area of Hampton Bays goes up 2% every year. You're still throwing a blanket number instead of correctly adjusting each area. There are sub-neighborhoods all over this. Let me hand this out now so you can see exactly what I'm saying.
Exactly, Jim. So some people, everybody seems to think that, that that's the, and I was one of them, that if you
You could,
do this
Get Kevin.
tax reassessment,
Yeah,
it's
Kevin
gonna
has to turn
hurt
the TV on.
people of modest means, but really it's equalizing and getting it back to where it should be.
Correct. The whole purpose of an assessor's department is to reflect what the market is doing. Right now, our numbers don't mean anything. It's just like darts on a dartboard. I've been appraising for 25 years. I was the guy who was in charge of keeping the town at 100% for 7 years, up until 2019. So this is like my wheelhouse, this is my passion. I get fired up, but I apologize, because it's so frustrating. I see the people we're trying to help, the seniors, and the working-class families, they're getting screwed. And it's just because we got off 100% market value. We were within 5% up until 2019. Everything was going great. And I know you guys had hard decisions to make, and I'm not saying at the time it wasn't the right decision. But what I'm saying, we're at a point now, at 63% of equalization, where you got outliers sometimes 70%, it doesn't make any sense.
are you saying that the property taxes have gone up
I'm
significantly
talking
since?
assessments, I'm not talking property
since-
taxes.
Assessments.
Well, okay, the number that they pay at the end of the year, right? I've looked at them. I mean, they stayed relatively, I mean, they've gone up because contracts go up and, things happen, right? Inflationary environment. But your comment to the seniors are getting screwed, I'd like, let's qualify that a little bit more. I patently disagree with what you're saying. I do not disagree that there's disparity in assessment rates for some of our higher-end homes, but it's not like they are paying significantly more than they had been in 19. That's important to say, like we are not abandoning them. In fact, we've increased our qualifications for senior exemptions on their property tax in that time as well.
Let me just
Mike?
respond to that. So, but the taxes they're paying are dependent on the correct assessment. So we can do all the patches and everything else, but if we don't have the right assessment, then what the hell are we doing here? I want the seniors to have the right assessment, to have whatever exemptions that we could do to help them, so they're paying the correct number. Right now, they're not paying the correct number.
So are you going to go through your document, and are you going to finish
I'm gonna go
yours?
through the presentation, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through that.
And to show you just by the map, if you could look at the color-coded map, if you see all the different colors, right? Those are sub-neighborhoods. Those are comprised of similar-sized houses, lot sizes, kind of like a development, okay? And you can see that there's so many of them that they all vary in different rates. Like the blue next to a purple, the blue could be 5 million, and then the purple could be 2 million.
Is there a key to this?
There's not. I just wanted to use an example
Okay.
that there are so many different valuations. It's not like Levittown where you have all the same houses and all the same lots. So it's just like there's no adjustments to be made. You could throw that one percentage on and everybody gets affected correctly. Well, you can't do that here because there's so many different outliers.
Jim, it's because of that, because we have such a wide disparity of values in this town?
Correct.
Is that's the main reason for the
One street
disparity in
could
the
be 5
equalization
million,
rate?
the next street could be 750,000.
Because it
You
doesn't,
can't put the same
it just seems like, my experience, some of the towns out west, that equalization rate stays fairly constant year after year. I mean, maybe it's maybe it's a percentage changes.
And
here
it
there.
works, because
Right.
everything's the same.
But here, because of such disparity, the Gin Lane houses and whatnot compared to the, the
And it's in
Flanders
the same
houses.
school district as the $500,000 house on Miller Place Drive.
So that causes and causes an increase in the disparity in this.
I don't
equalization rate.
believe all of the parcels in the town of Huntington are the same.
Oh, no,
So
not at
it's-
all,
it's,
no,
you
no.
know,
It's just
I mean,
that
we're
the
making
disparity-
suppositions here that are,
No, not at
They're a
all.
lot more similar than they are out here. Is that better?
All I know is I lived in Hampton Bays when we went to 100% valuation, and I got hammered with taxes.
And one of the reasons why is because they waited so long to reassess. They got to the point where it was just ridiculous. And we're reaching the point of that, to be honest. I mean, I'm looking at the assessments because I'm the one who handles the sales. It's like, I'm the sales guy and I'm analyzing everything. I'm like, well, our assessments are, 50% off there, 40% off here. It's just,
What does East Hampton do? I mean, they're a similar town.
they haven't reassessed in like
I don't-
30 years.
What's,
Yeah, I don't
what's
know
their
the
ER
last time.
these days? You know?
I'm not sure.
And it's not that we're, the town's gonna get more money out of this, it's just
No.
gonna.
No, it's the same
gonna
money.
No, you're right.
It
equalize
Exactly.
distributes.
The
Right.
Well,
distribution
yeah, you guys
amongst
set
the
the tax rate.
residents.
Whatever you guys need, you just
Right.
use the tax rate to whatever the
Right,
assessments are.
right. It's like, I think, Councilperson McNamara said, that the pizza analogy, that the fact that, and maybe it's just clear for the people that may be listening, that, an increase in your assessment does not necessarily reflect an increase in your taxes.
It's a tax rate.
Right, just a tax rate. So the tax rate could go down if
Right.
the value of the overall assessments increase, your tax rate's gonna drop. So-
And what's great too, in 100% market value, if the market goes down, I've been here in the past, where we lower assessments.
and that
So it
has
goes both
happened
ways.
when?
Back, late 2000,
2008,
2010.
for about
Late
4
2009.
months.
okay, well,
No, seriously, I mean, my whole life, market values. have been
okay,
lower
but
here.
what I'm trying to say is it goes both ways. That's
I
all.
will also say that my taxes did at one point go down. My
Okay.
assessed value
There you
did go
go.
down.
All right, so I'll just quickly go through the
Thank you.
slide
Sorry.
presentation, just to give you an idea of a reassessment and the purpose of a reassessment. All right, so, and you have this in front of you as well. So, the purpose of a reassessment, to ensure that all properties are assessed fairly at a uniform level of assessment. Currently, we are at a uniform level of assessment, which is 69.5. So every property in the town is assessed uniformly, but it's at 69.5%. So what a reassessment does is it restores fairness within a community. Frequently asked questions, typically questions that are asked during a reassessment. If my assessment increases, will my taxes increase? Does my town collect more taxes? And I'll answer these questions on the next slide. Does New York State require the town to conduct reassessments? And if assessments increase, will school districts receive less funding from the state?
Those are all good questions.
Okay. And in answer to those questions, dispelling the myths, reassessments shift the tax burden among property types, neighborhoods, etc. So if we have, let's say we have postmodern type houses that are increasing more in value than, let's say, a colonial or a Cape, doing a reassessment actually brings all of those to what their level of assessment should be, so that they are all increasing or decreasing in value at the same time. The tax levy is distributed fairly over a broader tax base, which is based on current market values. Tax rates are adjusted accordingly. The tax rates are determined by the budgets of the school, county, and count. So if you have a broader tax base and your levy remains the same, then your tax rate will be adjusted accordingly. So if your tax base increases, dramatically or drastically, your tax rate most likely will go down. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because your assessment increases that your taxes are gonna increase. It all has to balance out. Something goes up, something must come down.
So just to clarify, so it is possible then through assessment, some taxes will go down in some communities?
Correct. So typically what happens during a reassessment, it's usually a third, and a third. Some stay the same, some go up, some will go down. That's usually the way the distribution occurs. The state provides a standard to ensure properties are assessed uniformly. So it does not mean that, the state requires us to do reassessments. The state does not use assessments as a way to determine school state aid. The school district's wealth is a factor in that. So when the state determines how much school aid schools get, they do not use the assessments in that factor. It's based on the actual wealth that is within that school district or that
And
community.
how do school districts determine wealth?
Not by the
I'm sorry,
assessments.
how does the
Mhm.
state determine wealth per school district?
How does the state determine the
Median
wealth?
income.
Without
Median
using
income.
reassessment?
Right, I
or
would say,
assessment.
by the income in that neighborhood. Whatever the.
Census data.
So they don't compare commercial to residential assessments
Uh,
when they determine their state aid? Okay,
I'm
because
not sure.
I,
But I know I have read, it's,
It's based on median
It's-
household income.
uh-huh.
it's not used in a factor. I mean, I believe I have researched that for you as well, several times. And everything I come across says that it's not used as a factor to
And
determine
school
the
lunches
state
too, by
aid.
the way.
Yeah, it's not.
So when you say the state doesn't require, the reassessment, but they do, it says it provides a standard to ensure that's the
Right,
equalization rate?
right, so if you don't, the state doesn't require municipalities to be at 100%. What they do require is that every property is uniformly assessed. That's why the equalization rate is developed. So that we can't have someone who's assessed at 50% of the market and then someone who's assessed at, 20% of the market. On the assessment roll, it will show your assessment, and then it will show your market value, and all of those market values are uniformly at 69.5%. And then here we have actually how the tax is distributed. So we have two properties, prior to a reassessment, they were both assessed at $250,000. Their taxes both equally paying $3,000 each, so therefore their town collected $6,000. As a result of a reassessment, their new assessments, property A, you can see went to $400,000. Property B, they also increased at $350,000. However, property A is now paying $3,500 in taxes, whereas property B is paying $2,500 in taxes, yet still only $6,000 are being collected in taxes.
And that's
And that's based on the
thing.
levy, what you
Yeah.
need to collect in real property taxes. If your levy increases, you need to collect more, then most likely you're gonna have to increase your, the tax rate could possibly increase.
It seems counterintuitive to say we're gonna increase your assessment, but your taxes are gonna go down. So that's the part that we really
Right.
have to explain to the community and, make clear
Right.
here so that we can talk about it.
And then I actually have some real-life examples here. So we have 468 Sagaponack Main Street. This property actually sold in November of 2023. It sold for $3.8 million. It's a 2,300 square foot dwelling on half an acre. The current assessment is $4.5 million. With the level of assessment, the equalization rate at 69.5%, their full market value, we're saying their market value is $6.5 million. Their current taxes in 2023 were $8,944.56. Now we have a house right down the street, 639
Wait, I'm sorry, if
Sagaponic
it was
Lane.
sold in 2023 for 3.8,
Mhm.
why would the assessed value be 4.5?
Because we haven't done a reassessment. That has been their assessment since 2019.
Oh, it doesn't,
We haven't done a
okay.
reassessment,
Alright,
we can't
doesn't-
change the assessment, that's,
Okay.
that's what it is. That 4.5 million, I could do, I could look back further on the assessment to see how we arrived at that, but maybe, let's say, 2017, 2018, it sold for, 4.3 or 4.4, so we arrived at 4.5. That has
Surprising that
been the
something actually
assessment,
went down in
has
that
not
area.
changed. So now we have 639 Sagaponic Maine. We have a 1,600 square foot dwelling, half an acre lot, same size as the other lot. Their assessment is $4,188,900. With the equalization rate, it brings their full market value to $6 million, and their current taxes are $8,302.40. So almost similar houses in size, same acreage. So let's say 468 files a grievance this year. They file a grievance because they say, well, I purchased my house for 3.8 million. If we apply the equalization rate to that, it would actually bring their assessment. They should be assessed at 2,641,000. So that means they get a reduction. Their new assessment is the 2,641,000. Their taxes, their proposed taxes would go down from the, I think I quoted 8.9, their taxes would go down to $5,234.46.
May I just interject something too?
Yes.
Is grievance, when someone wins a grievance, it's only good for 1 year. So let's say this person comes in, they get a reduction to 2.6 million. That's just good for that 1 year, and then the next year it automatically goes right back up. And in the past, under 100% market value, we could say this person's obviously overassessed. We correct it, so they don't have to grieve anymore. To where now we just have to leave it, and the person has to grieve every single year.
What does it go up to? What does it go back to?
It could possibly
number.
go back to what, if it's not, if our inventory is correct, because that's the first thing we're gonna look at. Do we have the right square footage? Do we have the right number of bedrooms, baths, et cetera? Pool, tennis court, if all of that information is correct, we don't have to fix any of that. Most likely then, their assessment's gonna go back to what it was.
Which is 90%.
Because if it's a market
progress
change, you know what, their land value's too high, we can't fix that. That's considered a market change.
Right. So in the past, I would go in, I'd figure out what the problem was. I was like, oh, well, their land value's too high. And then I fix it, and I don't hear from them again, because we corrected it. But then every year they have to come back. It's a pain.
Are you,
That seems like such a waste.
And then
And
we
we
have to go to
didn't have
small
to do
claims.
that before the freeze, but now.
What happens when they go to small claims?
They have to take a day off work, we have to.
No, but I mean, does that adjust it then going forward, or is it small claims only 1 year?
It's 2
2 years,
2
a small
years.
claim. So they can go to small claims, get it adjusted. However, small claims, it's good for the year in which they file, and then the following year going forward.
And then it
That's
automatically just goes back to the.
But
It could
prior to the
possibly.
freeze, we would let it
I would correct
stay
it.
in
We
place.
would fix
I
it.
would fix it.
So.
If it was warranted, I would fix it.
As
Both.
part of the reassessment, we could have waterfront properties where we say, you know what, they need a -30 across the board. This entire waterfront in this area, we need to put a -30 market adjustment on it. So if we found that, oh, you know what, he's missing the market adjustment, all of these other people have it, let's give him the 30% too. We can't do that because it's considered a market adjustment. So he'll just have to stay the way he is
Yeah.
And we pay
until we can actually.
Can
we
I just
can't-
ask you a question, because this is just processing through my mind here. So when you get those things in the mail that tell you they'll grieve your taxes for you and they'll only take the first year's correction, they're getting it every, because you
50%
have to
of what
pay
you're gonna
them to
save.
get you grieve
They
it
have
every
to pay
year.
every year.
So
yeah.
then they just get a return customer every year.
Right, and we have to pay a service to fight for us in small claims. So we're wasting money that way too.
All right.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. All
Wait,
right.
could I just,
Yeah.
just, sorry, one last question to that. Did you find when the freeze began that there were more grievances filed since then? Since the
It's
freeze?
about,
Or no, not
It
really?
must
Less
be.
than
They're
usual.
doing it
Yeah,
every
it's
year.
less.
Because they're, yeah.
Okay.
because
'Cause
a lot of
nobody's
people-
moving.
Nobody's moving,
Nobody's
so there's
moving,
nothing,
right.
but people still grieve anyway.
But a lot of people do not understand the correlation between the equalization rate and their assessment. They're like, oh, my assessment is my assessment, it's fine. But now you have you have to look at your market value. It's your market value that's now out of whack. Like the example I just gave you. We have this guy at 4.5 million, yet he sold his house for 3.8. His market value is 3.8, not 4.5. All right, so now the next one. So if we were to do a reassessment at full market value, 639 Sagaponack Main Street, this is the one that did not sell. The proposed assessment would be 3.6 million. His proposed taxes would be 7,135, not the 8,300. And then 468 Sagaponack, the one that did sell for 3.8, his assessment would probably be 3.8 million, and his proposed taxes would be 7,531. So now you see, by 468 coming in and filing a grievance and getting his taxes lowered, however, 639 would still be paying that 8,300, rather than what he should be paying is 7,135.
But just for that 1 year, because then the,
No, this would be based on doing a reassessment.
oh, on the, yeah.
Right,
right,
then
yeah,
they
so-
would, yeah, they would be paying, it distributes the taxes fairly between those two properties. It shows what both of them would potentially be paying in taxes, whereas right now, 639 is paying
Yeah.
the higher taxes.
Is that a legal requirement?
Even though
that-
he has a
that it-
smaller residence.
Is it a legal requirement, at least, that it goes back to the original assessment after the
For
grievance
small
year?
claims, yes.
It is, huh? Wow.
Small claims, yes. Real property tax law, 739, I believe it is, that it's only 2 years.
Why is the proposed assessment 3.6 if it's sold for 3.8?
No, the one that sold is the 468 Sagaponack. 639 is the,
Oh, I see.
is the house right down the street, which is
Thank you.
similar size, similar acreage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we, on our, and it's not,
Have you
this
done?
might be a Terry question, but do we put on our tax bill the assessment and the
Yes.
market value now?
Yes, we're required to
We
put
do the
both.
math for the people.
Yeah, so
Oh.
here we get calls now,
Yeah.
why are the two numbers different,
Right,
know, so,
right.
yeah.
Have you done this evaluation for other parts of the town? I mean, we're choosing Main Street, Sagaponack. It's in the
We could do
Bridgehampton
the
School
same.
District.
We-
It's got a $12 billion tax base. Clearly, this is an affluent area, one of the most affluent areas in
We
the
could,
country.
we could definitely do the
But
same
my
thing
question
without,
is,
I mean,
have you
throughout,
for this?
for the,
You know, like
for the
just north of here
presentation, no, I
on
haven't, but in
Topping's
my
Path,
office,
or-
I have. The reason
Okay.
why I picked this one, because I actually got a call from one of those property owners and stating, that he was gonna file a grievance. Actually, I got the call from the property owner at 639, actually. And he was using his neighbor's property as a comp. He said, I'm overassessed. This property sold at 3.8. Why is my assessment, why is my market value so high? So that's why I happened to use this as an example. I said, if you file a grievance, most likely you're gonna get reduced. So that's why.
So this is the only comparison that we're seeing for this?
For
today.
today's presentation, yes. It's just to
I look at this
demonstrate
as
what the inequity
townwide
is.
reassessment, inequities, and your points are, definitely hitting home. And then we have our individual school districts. We have, and
We have
different.
13, yes.
Right, and we have, they're different in each one of the school districts. And I wouldn't want people in one school district to think that if this house gets reassessed, that it's necessarily going to contribute financially to their school district.
Of course not.
Because, well, we understand that, but I'm saying it in public, but, the press is sitting here. And, it is a school district by school district evaluation to fund their schools in addition to state aid.
Right.
It'd be better if this was in an average neighborhood.
What do you
It's
mean
like-
by that, Bill?
Like a working class neighborhood.
In addition,
It would show the same
Yeah.
thing, though. It would-
You're gonna see something similar. It might not be
Yeah.
as drastic, obviously, like
Yeah.
John was saying, but
Right.
it's gonna happen no matter where you are in the town. I see the sales every
Yeah.
day. I look at the assessments. You're gonna find the same pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just to show you how the inequity it's created throughout the town. It doesn't matter what school district it is, or, you know, what village it is. It's just inequity in how it's created. By reducing some properties, you know, through small claims or grievance, while the other properties are left alone.
So using that analysis, why is it that there is only a handful of municipalities in the state that actually do what you are suggesting?
Because they don't have the vast differences as far as values and property sizes and house sizes as the east end of Long Island.
Southampton, well, you know, Southampton town is
I
very
don't know
unique.
if that's an
when
accurate
I-
statement,
It's
or,
very
you know,
accurate.
we definitely have a
Well-
disparate, disparate.
I mean, there have been, Tommy John, there have been articles just recently written in Newsday and New York Times about some of the issues of homelessness on the East End. I mean, there's certainly
know.
inequality, and, the folks who've worked hard here to just present to us, some information that could be a factor in some of the inequity that we're seeing across the board. Obviously, we're not
I
here
don't
to.
know how homelessness, and it's a good point, and we definitely, and you know where I stand on, housing and homelessness in our community. But as far as assessments and school taxes, I don't understand
Well,
the connection with that statement. And what-
Well, you asked about, why aren't other municipalities taking the steps toward reassessment?
Right.
And the gentleman here mentioned the fact that our market values, right, of our homes far exceed the values of other municipalities. And there is a greater disparity.
In some areas of our
exists.
town, yeah. So, and I said at the beginning of my statements, townwide taxes, I agree, I 100%. But then when we get down to school aid taxes, it is a marked difference. And in fact, it should be noted that since we made this freeze, our school aid from the state has increased dramatically. I mean, Hampton Bays has gone up like almost 40%.
But that was a state initiative.
And that's a state, right, well, they use the value, of the town in their calculations, especially with the building aid.
So how does that impact, is the state giving more aid to certain school districts because of the equalization rate is so low?
I checked with John Wallum at the state, and he said if we do a full reassessment, it will not affect state aid. So, I mean, we could look further, but that's correct, about state aid will not be affected by a full reassessment.
Yes,
per New York State.
I was hoping that John would be able to speak,
Yes.
because, he's.
They're all losing
he
money
has all
next
of
year
that.
anyway.
So-
But so, the
Okay,
takeaways from this are, we
With
are
the
in
exception of
compliance with
Hampton
state
Bays.
law.
Hampton Bays is scheduled to get more this year.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll see what the clawback is.
So we have John Woolham, our regional manager from Office of Real Property Tax Services. John, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yes, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Let's
great.
hear it.
A loud buzz.
Okay. First of all, I really apologize for not being there in person, but my car clearly had other items this morning. A number of comments and, I guess, additional information for some of the questions that came up earlier. Regarding the number of reassessments statewide, on average, well, first of all, as background, there are just under 1,000 towns and cities in the state of New York. And in any typical year, there are, I would say, approximately 200 that reassess. And in this day and age, typically, when a community reassesses, they do so at 100%. Many of those 200s are repeats. They will either do it annually or on a cycle. There was another question, again, forgive me if I'm jumping around here a little bit, as to why communities choose not to reassess. And on a related related note, there was a question about the level of assessment of the other communities in Suffolk County. At this point, 6 out of the 10 townships in Suffolk County have an equalization rate that is below 1%. I believe that East Hampton actually has the lowest equalization rate of townships in the state. They are about a third of 1%. No one in Suffolk County is at 100%. Shelter Island, similar to Southampton, had been reassessing annually, but for a variety of reasons, they have not done one in 3 years. So their level, I believe, is down around 79%. They will be reassessing for 2025. They wanted to do so for 2024, but again, because of the period of time that had elapsed since the previous reassessment, they found that it was a lot more work than they were able to complete in 1 year, but they are planning to do this for 2025.
What community?
Let's see, what else? I know the discussion started off with some questions about exemptions. I do want to add that if the town chooses to do this at some point, there is a law on the books that the town, I think, could look at and probably would want to consider. It is Real Property Tax Law 485V. There are a number of local options within that, and this is something that would have to be adopted by the town regardless. But long story short, this allows that in the situation of a reassessment, that properties that had more than a certain threshold change, with that threshold change being established by the town, could phase in the amount of that change over a 3-year period.
That's what we asked
I'm
for.
not gonna belabor that. I can certainly send you a copy of the law, but that is something that might work to address some of the concerns that were expressed earlier. I do want to, basically say that Lisa and James gave a very good presentation. They gave clearly a very, very accurate representation of why reassessment is important. Even if this 485V option were not available, the bottom line here is that the equalization rate represents an overall average level of assessment. So presently, the equalization rate that was issued for last year, 69.5, or for that matter, the one that will presumably be confirmed for 2024 at 63%. That says that on average, all assessments in the town represented 69.5% on the 2023 roll, and presumably 63% on the 2024 roll. But again, that's an overall average. So, as James and Lisa have explained, one doesn't have to look very far to find examples of homes that whose assessed value may represent a higher figure than that average number, or as maybe the more typical case, the lower than the equalization rate. The equalization rate, again, is meant to represent an overall average. The term commonly used with the equalization rate is that it represents rough justice. And by that, we mean that it is meant to the degree possible, to ensure that where there is tax apportionment, so at the county level, when the county is deciding how much tax should be paid by each of the towns, or within school districts that have segments in more than one town. An example might be the Riverhead School District, which I believe that has segments in 3 of the towns. It ensures that approximately the correct and fair share is borne by each of those segments relative to their contributory value of the entire district. However, what that does not address is individual parcel equity, which which both James and Lisa spoke to. So, for example, even though our analysis is done at a town-wide level, we're looking at all of the sales within the town to develop an estimate of what we think the residential assessments represent the market value. As they both pointed out, there are differences in different segments of value. And when Lisa and James and I have looked at this in past years, we've always looked at three strata of properties. Properties that sold less than 2 million, between 2 and 5 million, and more than 5 million. And we see pretty consistently, year to year, that the higher the level, the higher the interval of the selling price, and let's stick with the properties that are more than 5 million, the level of assessment, or the ratio, if you will, of assessment to actual selling price is significantly lower than the other intervals. So what does that mean? I believe James said this, but when properties are under-assessed, it means that they're not paying their fair share of the property tax. Good, bad, or indifferent, the property tax structure in New York State, and frankly, in most states in this country and in most countries in the world, is based on the underlying premise that property tax will be paid on the basis of a property's value. So if a property's assessment isn't in sync with a reasonable market value, essentially it means that property is paid less tax than it should, and if that property is paying less than it should, it means all other taxpayers are paying more than they should to some degree. They, in essence, are subsidizing the under-assessed properties. So the issue of exemptions aside, and clearly, look, there's a need for exemptions to insulate people who have need of that, but based on, whether it's based on means or whether it's based on other criteria. Obviously there's senior citizens exemptions, there are veterans exemptions. But again, the underlying premise here is that for the property tax to be fair and to ensure that to the degree possible, people aren't paying more than they should, reassessment is necessary. There's really no other way I can say it. That's what ensures that at a most basic level, people are paying their fair share. I know some years ago, there was some discussion, well, not some years ago, earlier this morning, there was some discussion about school districts. A while back, I don't remember how many years ago this was, it was certainly, I'm gonna say perhaps 10 years ago, Rita might remember. I know there was some discussion involving issues with the Riverhead School District. And that was one of the examples of why reassessment is important. Because there again, when it comes to the equalization rate is going to reflect the overall average of the town, which, the level of assessment, which of course will include these higher value properties. And part of the issue, if I'm remembering it right, and I'll refer to Lisa, was that the properties in Southampton in the Riverhead segment were not the high-end properties. And so when it came to tax apportionment, because there was not reassessment, or there was the prospect of not reassessing, those properties as a group might actually pick up a higher share of apportionment because their assessments were going to be influenced by the overall rate. Whereas in the case of reassessments, or a reassessment, those individual assessments could be adjusted to an appropriate level, an appropriate market value. So even with the town-wide equalization rate, there would be some mitigation of that. Essentially, reassessment speaks to local equity, which is something the equalization rate it was never intended to do. Again, it's ensuring equity when it comes to tax apportionment, but it doesn't address the equity of individual assessments. Let's see, what else?
While you're there, does
Yes.
Riverhead do a 100% market value to equalization
No.
rate annually?
No,
And how about the town of
No.
Brookhaven?
no, Brookhaven is one of the towns that has an equalization rate of less than 1%.
And I ask specifically because we do have school districts that go over the boundaries between towns. One is the Riverhead Central School District, the other is Eastport South Manor. And if you could speak to how, if one town doesn't do the 100% market value equalization and another town does, how that would work to keep people paying their fair share of school taxes.
I will say that the tax receiver did say that our residents in those school districts are getting hammered. That's just what she told me.
Yeah, so,
So if you would address that, that would be,
We can't hear him. He's talking, but it's not, there he is.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat that?
no, sure, of course. No, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut off whoever was speaking. Essentially, the tax apportionment process is going to occur regardless of whether reassessment occurs. So if hypothetically you have a school district where the taxes, let's say, are very high, and you have one segment that does a reassessment, the reassessment, because again, I think it's reasonable to say that if someone's tax burden is higher in one segment based on the school tax, then let's say the neighboring school districts, that would likely have an influence on prospective selling prices. So that's something that could be addressed in a reassessment in that, and I'm not saying that the assessments would be lowball, but the assessments would reflect an accurate and reasonable market value, because at that point, the influence that the tax liability, the owner of those properties would incur, would certainly be something that I think any prospective buyer who's being diligent would look at that and say, well, I like the house, but boy, these taxes are more than I would pay. Now, in the segments of a shared school district where the community does not reassess, well, basically, they're going to be at the mercy of the equalization rate. The assessments are going to be static, as was said earlier by, I believe, both James and Lisa. Unless a community reassesses, the only assessment changes that are legally permissible are for new construction, demolition, or for successful challenges. So the assessors and the assessor office really has their hands tied. Sure, they can make reductions where there are successful challenges, be those grievances or scars, but where they see homes that have gone up in value, they can't change those. And again, that goes back to the whole underlying issue of equity. So, look, in a perfect world, everybody would reassess. And again, forgive me if I'm going a little far afield here, but I think someone had raised the question before as to why communities that don't reassess don't do so. Because yes, in a perfect world, I would certainly say everyone would. For better or worse, there is nothing that compels communities to reassess. There is an annual valuation date which provides a legal basis for doing so, because, and I think Lisa referred to this earlier, that value was established as of the preceding July 1st each year. So the valuation date for the town's upcoming 2024 roll is July 1st, 2023, and so on, whether you look back in time or whether you look forward. So it's always going to reflect the changes in the market. If you have a stable market, there might not be too many changes. And that would speak to what Lisa had observed for 19 and 20, before the influences of the pandemic were felt, where the market was relatively stable and it still allowed the town to claim a level of 100 that was confirmed as the E grade. And I think that it was mentioned before, but there is a tolerance of plus or minus 5% when it comes to that number. However, when the market starts moving, well, of course, that's part of our job to try and measure that as best we can. And if a town doesn't reassess, that's going to be reflected in a changing equalization rate, which, if the market is going up, the equalization rate will come down to some degree, because the static assessments now represent a smaller percentage of market value. And if hypothetically, and it has happened at some point, it happened during the mortgage crisis around 2008, 2009, there were many equalization rates that increased because market values actually decreased. And where market values decrease and a town doesn't reassess, well, okay, those static assessments now represent a larger percentage of market value, so the E grade goes up. So the thing here is that the changes in apportionment, tax apportionment, of course, are going to be influenced by the equalization rate, because the equalization rate is the official measure of a town's level. So in doing a reassessment, the town is in effect taking local control over the equalization process. And again, what it's able to do is it's able to look at, or it's able to make adjustments for changes in property value, not on an average, but what assessments and values should be based on neighborhood markets or pocket markets, or whatever the case may be. I don't want to lose sight of the fact of, again, the underlying premise, something here that I would emphasize, and that both James and Lisa spoke to, about the issue of underassessment. I would defer to Lisa and James. My recollection some years back when I came down, I remember I was able to make it down for a face-to-face meeting with this type of discussion, is that the high-valued homes in Southampton represented something on the magnitude of 20 to 25% of the value of the town's assessment roll. To give this some sort of context, based on the town's, when we do the work for equalization, essentially we look at 4 major property types: residential, commercial, vacant land, and utility. And on the town's 2023 assessment, which had assessments over $77 billion in total, almost $71 billion of that was residential. So again, residential value in the town is what's going to be driving, it's going to be driving taxes, it's going to be driving equalization rates, because the other types of properties really represent a fairly small percent of the roll. Now, if it's still the case that higher end properties, again, let's take a figure of more than 5 million, if they really represent 20 to 25%, somewhere in there, that segment of the town is pushing around an awful lot of tax. And there again, if that segment is under-assessed, or I'll say it a little differently, to the degree that segment is under-assessed, that can result in a fairly significant shift of taxes to everybody else.
Are we able to, is your office able to provide some sort of analysis demonstrating that shift of burden if it is indeed happening? Is that something that you can look at based on?
We can't really look at the actual shift of burden. There is a way to do that, but that's really something, the process for doing that only occurs when a reassessment has actually been accomplished. Let me explain that a little more so it makes sense. There is a legally required process called assessment disclosure, it is legally required when a town does a reassessment and the prior year's equalization rate is less than 85. So it's kind of a fait accompli that when Southampton chooses to do a reassessment, the town will have to go through that process. What that process looks at is it will take the most recently extended taxes. And of course, in Suffolk, there's a combined town-county school bill that gets issued in December each year. So let me just offer this as an example. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the town had done a reassessment for the 2024 roll. We know that's not the case, but just trying to put this in a context that perhaps is a little more easily understood. So the most recently extended taxes would have been those combined town, county, and school taxes on the bill issued in December of '23. So let's say we had a brand new set of assessed values, preliminary assessments for 2024. This process would say, okay, we know the 23 assessments, that's a given, that's on the assessment roll. We know how much taxes people actually pay for town, county, and school purposes. Now, if we were to take all of these preliminary assessments, and we're not predicting future taxes, but if we were to take those preliminarily established assessments for the '24 roll, and we use them to redistribute those actual December 23 town, county, and school taxes, here's what that would look like. And there's information that comes out of that. There are tables that will show shifting between different types of property, the shifting within groups of property, and the end result is a letter that would go to every property owner that would say, look, here's what you did pay. Had these new assessments been in effect to raise the same levies, because again, we don't know what future tax levies are going to be, but had they been in effect to raise the same levy, here's what your bill would have looked like. So it gives people a sense of the effect of the reassessment without predicting future taxes. So the long-winded answer to your question is yes, but it's very difficult to do that precisely without having new assessments. It's possible, and again, I would defer to James and Lisa, to perhaps look at something like a school district, a neighborhood. I mean, clearly, since reassessment hasn't been done since 2019, and given the nature of the market in Southampton, I think it's a reasonable assumption on my part that there's going to be a lot of variation in how assessments move from one property to another. Perhaps there's something that could be done. Again, it would be very, very gross, because there's a limit to how precise you can get unless you're actually doing the reassessment. But there could be some observations made about, again, certain neighborhoods or certain school districts. What's the relative level of assessment compared to others?
Yeah.
And of course, the lower the level, you know what, let me go back and let me use the example I was using about the 3 different inputs that we looked at. And this was just informational. This was not what we did for the equalization rate.
John?
Because for the equalization rate, it's got to be.
John?
So, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think you did answer Councilman Iacele's question. Did he answer that for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
No, thank you, John.
Yeah.
And it was very helpful, the information you provided us.
John, James was told that New York State aid to the schools won't be affected by a full reassessment. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, I do. My understanding is that state aid is governed by a state aid formula, which is very long, very complex. I will freely admit I don't know anything about it. I know that the equalization rate is a component in one area of that formula. But I'm given to understand that it is a very small portion of it, and that in general, that's governed by, or it's influenced by a district's wealth. And of course, the equalization rate speaks to property value. So, yes, my understanding is that would not affect state aid. I would have to defer to someone from state education in terms of explaining that formula. But I've been told that that formula, or the description of it, is something like 40 pages long.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And I thank you for being able to log on today. Unfortunately, I know you weren't able to make it, obviously, but I will definitely be in touch.
No, I appreciate it. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. We are happy to help the town however you see fit. You know, we certainly provide a number of consultative services. You know, Lisa can speak to that. And again, if at some point you would like to continue the conversation, I'll be happy to come down, and hopefully this time I'll make it once I get my car fixed.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna look into that, the RPTL 485. I know there was a reason why we were not able to do it. I know that you and we did talk about that, so I will reach out to you, Councilman Scavone,
Yeah.
and let you know what the outcome of that was.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So I just have one more question. If the reassessment cost was 1.9 million in 2022, what is it now?
I wouldn't know. That was 22 years ago when they started, so I can only assume that, you know, the cost has probably gone up.
Had we already investigated a company at that point? We haven't, right?
Well,
We'd have to do an
Cole Layer
RFP.
Trumbull is now Tyler Technologies. They are one of the major reassessment consulting firms. There are others, but the one that I am most familiar with would be Tyler Technologies.
Is this memory serve correct? Did we also just talk about another option of bringing people in-house to do it?
Well, this is how I look at it. Since I did this for 7 years, doing the whole township, the valuation part's the easy part. I did it myself. We actually have another certified appraiser in the office that joined us recently, who would be awesome to assist me. And the value end we pretty much handle that part, working with the outside company. In the past, the outside company would do everything, and that's a disaster because they don't know the area. They don't know the values out here. What we need manpower to do the data collection. They go out to the property, they look at the house, they get the measurements, the quality, everything, pictures, pools, they collect everything so our inventory is spot on. That's the most important thing in a reassessment. And it's just a matter of getting that back and the in-house office doing the values, just like we had for those 7 years. It's the same process. You start at one side of the town, you go over, and you keep going over until you get to 100%.
And we have an upgraded system in place to do that.
We have-
It's a
we
matter
have
of
aerial
plugging
photography.
in data.
You guys have been great giving
And
us the
we-
funds we've needed for the aerial stuff, so it's just a matter of getting the manpower. So, we could get probably quotes for, all aspects of it, so I hope money is not, the end all, so maybe.
Yeah, but you're not
It's definitely a big part of it.
suggesting
Oh, no,
higher-
but I'm saying, like, if you're saying, well, we can't do 2.5, well, maybe we could do it for 2, just by cutting certain things out and working around it.
But you're not saying hire people full-time to do it, right? Because then when the project's over, we wouldn't have the need for them. So what's
We have
the
no need for them
solution?
after the initial, right,
Yeah.
Right.
that's my job.
So
Always
what would
move the
be?
code
The,
enforcement.
the only thing is that when you do a townwide reassessment, it's not just doing the residential. We have to look at our vacant land sales, we have to look at industrial, we definitely have to look at commercial, because during COVID, we know that commercial values changed. Retail's changed, office space has changed, so we need to take a look at all of that. We do not have commercial appraisers on staff. We would have to send out requests for I&E, and then once those I&E statements come back in, we would need someone to look at them. So that may require a consultant company to just do that.
Would you be able to provide us with what you think would be the outline of what we could do in-house, what we'd need to get from an outside source? And then we'd have to talk to Dorothy if the board wants to do the townwide reassessment. What would we do you know, we'd have to, how we'd allocate the funds. Did you have
I would
something
like
that
to
you wanted to
include-
present?
Before
Well,
we go
everything
on-
was covered in my presentation, literally everything, so.
Oh,
it's just
I would
something-
like to include some kind of evaluation for our 4 school districts that do overlap district boundaries. We have Wayne-Scott, Sag Harbor, Eastport, South Manor, and then, of course, Riverhead. Riverhead, you know, we had members of the Riverhead Town Board in here the other day, and I am interested to know how the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency in Riverhead, affects the funding of that school and how our residents pay and the rate to which they pay into that school district. So I think these are important questions, and I really appreciate you all coming here. I appreciate, like I said, your points about the town reassessment and inequity issues with various properties. But we are concerned about our school districts, and we would like the community to know the individuality of the school district throughout the town. And, an assessment in one part of the town may or may not affect, school district taxes in another part of the town. So, okay.
Okay.
And Lisa, do you have to complete the entire town reassessment before you would actually have to have the ability to change the assessments in certain parts of the town? Like you could,
Oh, yeah, you can't
right,
do
you
it.
can't focus,
piecemeal.
like, say,
Yeah,
we want to
you
do
can't.
Gin Lane and Meadow Lane
Yeah,
or
you would
something.
have to do it
Right,
across the
right.
board. You can't do it in just,
I just had another question, just about public understanding of assessment. We've received some comments from the community that, you mentioned earlier, Lisa, that, some folks don't understand the relationship between the equalization rate and assessment. And I think there have been questions that have come to us asking if we can demonstrate to residents how assessed values are determined publicly, like on the website. I don't know if there's something that we can provide that just shows the procedure for the public.
yeah, I think
Or-
we actually have a video on
There
our
is?
website of how assessments are, yeah.
Okay, because,
Do that.
I'll check to make sure that it's still on there. I know we did.
okay,
Check to see if it's still on there. It is, yeah,
it's still there? Okay.
yeah.
Send, if you can, just send that to me
Sure.
and be happy to see that. And another question that has come before the board, since we're talking about, reassessment tools and, hiring people and whatnot, can Zillow be used as a tool for reassessment, or is that not
No.
recommended? It's been brought to our board. I just wanted to.
I wish my house was worth what Zillow says it's
Exactly.
worth.
Right, right,
Or sometimes
okay.
not.
Just want- And finally, I just want to also just state for the public's edification that this is not, we're not looking to take action right now. This is merely just to provide information for this board to consider.
Right.
And we're not looking to make any decision anytime soon, but this is really important for our knowledge as town board members who represent community members who have questions about these matters. And I just want to say I appreciate the both of you for coming to us and doing this work, because this is not easy work, so really appreciate it. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Very much, and now, now that it is the budget time, it's coming up soon, that we should consider it. So if the board were gonna discuss whether we would go do this, it would be very helpful if we could get that information from you about what we would need to do if we were gonna go down that path.
That way we
Okay,
could
and
put it in.
I'll reach out, to a company just to, kind of get an idea of what, if it's on a price per parcel or
Yeah,
whatever.
what we can
I'll
do
see what it
in-house,
is.
what we need outside
Mhm.
help with.
Okay, certainly.
All right,
Following up on
thank
Mike's
you.
question,
Wonderful.
you can't use Zillow, but to what degree are comps used as opposed to what Jim was saying as far as like looking at the pools and the actual physical inventory of a house compared to
Well, once we get
home
all,
sales?
yeah, once we get all the inventory correct and everything's in the system, then what I would do and my associate is we go through the sales and we pick out the ones that are arm's length, okay, that are a willing buyer and seller.
Right.
And then the ones that are legit, we base those off of.
Right.
Problem with Zillow and all those is they just
Yeah,
have
no.
every sale.
Yeah, not
They
talking
don't
about
weed them
Zillow,
out.
but
So,
like you could,
yeah, New York State.
you
we
could
have
tap
a
into
system-
the
Right, so we only use arm's
county
length
deed
transactions.
system.
And then we just go into and we tweak the land values, the building values, to where it's 100% market value. We do that from one side to the town, and that's it.
You said you actually go on the people's property?
During a reassessment, they would. We
We
would
do
send people
physical
out.
inspections.
Yeah, they go out with a
Mhm.
clipboard and they just take measurements,
And
they
they have
take
permission to do that
photos.
from the homeowner?
Well,
How does that work?
So when I've gone out on inspections, the homeowner will come outside, hey, what are you doing here? We just, identify ourselves, tell them what we're doing. We want to make sure that we have accurate inventory to make sure that we can give you a fair assessment. If they say, no, I don't want you here, okay, thank you very much, and then we leave. So we don't necessarily have to be there. It helps to be there. We do have the aerial imagery, which is also now a,
Pretty good tool.
yeah, it's a good tool, and New York State does consider that to be a physical inspection.
And building department records too, obviously.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Pools.
Permits.
Yeah,
And we never go inside the homes.
No.
right, we don't have to
Just
go
People are gonna
inside.
wonder.
Yeah,
when
that's-
you
that
say
gets a little
Yeah, we
weird.
don't have to go inside. The only time we'll go inside is like if it's, new construction and we just wanna see like the quality of material that they're using. The foreman or the contractor will let us, but once the house is, CO'd, occupied, we do not have to go inside.
I was on site when the town came and measured. And they walked right up on the property, took out this, started measuring everything.
Yep.
Who are you guys? And they said what they were doing.
Yeah, well, we just tell them, we just wanna make sure that our inventory is right, so that, your assessment is correct and
And what
we
is,
wanna be,
and the exemptions, what is the exemption for the seniors and the vets?
so the senior citizens, it's based on their income, which Tommy John mentioned, the town did adopt the higher income limit, so a senior 65 and older can have an income up to $58,000 and receive anywhere from 5 to 50% off their assessment. The
And
veterans exemption.
That's the assessment and not the multiplier,
That,
which
yeah, they
seems
could receive,
patently wrong, by the way. So your statement that they only get the 50% off their assessment, but it doesn't go to the multiplier is problematic.
Well, the veterans exemption, if they get 15% off their assessed value, let's say for a non-combat veteran, let's say their exemption, let's say is 50,000. We
Yeah.
then have to apply that equalization rate to the, so now their exemption may only end up being 42,000. You have to apply the equalization rate. If you're not 100% fully assessed, then you can't get 100% exemption.
Okay.
They go hand in hand.
And I just had one other question just to follow up, because this came up yesterday,
fine.
actually.
Don't like it.
The tax break that we give to like volunteer firefighters, do they have to be a volunteer firefighter for a company located within the town of
And
Southampton?
yep, yes,
They
they
do,
do.
okay.
So they can't get the exemption here in the town if they're, volunteering in Brookhaven. you
Okay.
know. Yeah, they have to be it has to be in Southampton town.
Okay.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you guys.
All right, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
And I'll definitely get back to you, Tommy
Okay.
John, on that 485.
Please do.
I will.
Mention that I went to see them this week. Okay.
Kara, Janice?
Not
you
sure
wanna-
where Michael is, but, next we have, new accessory dwelling unit legislation that Kara Bach and Janice Shearer are gonna discuss with us, that I believe was, something that Councilman Scavone worked on with them.
And others?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, yeah, so I'll do a
Right
little
into
bit
the
of a
afternoon.
lead in here. A number of years ago, 2018, we changed our, what was called accessory apartment code to an interesting configuration where hamlets in the town of Southampton were treated differently based on the hamlet percentage of their
Councilman?
area median income.
I hate to,
Yeah.
but I'm being told there's no sound for the meeting.
I was told
Not
that.
in here, but
Yeah, if it's
anybody
being
watching it
streamed.
can't hear anything we're saying.
All right, so how do we fix that?
I'm gonna ask Kevin.
Has that been going on the whole time? or
I am
just-
No, I think
impressed.
it went out at some point.
It went out at some point.
We had an issue with the internet, it was down for a second, but everything's good,
Okay.
so yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all good.
So do you want to check with your person on the other end of the phone
I'll
to
just
see
let
if
them
they
know
can
it should
hear?
be back.
Check one. So I was saying that the town board of Southampton had created an update to our accessory apartment code. And in the code, one of the central features of the code was that if you lived in a hamlet that was above the area median income, the lot size for an accessory apartment was different than if you lived in a hamlet that was below the area median income. And the lot size difference was if you were in a hamlet above the area median income, your lot size only needed to be 20,000 square feet to have an accessory apartment. If you were below the area median income, the lot size jumped up to 30,000 square feet. Presumably, the accessory apartments would go into areas of the town that were above the area median income, which, interesting, I voted for it. However, what we have found is that not a whole heck of a lot of accessory apartments have been created under this system. And so I'm looking to change that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Combined with that is now the town of Southampton, we have received grants from the state of New York, and we are dispersing some of those grants to our constituents to build accessory apartments. We also created a sister program where the town of Southampton is actually providing a no-interest loan for people to build out accessory apartments. We had that presentation here, I think 2 weeks ago. So what we're seeing is a disparity between the hamlets. If you have a lot that's below 30,000 square feet, in some hamlets, you just do not qualify for the funding opportunities to put an accessory apartment on your home. So what this legislation does, one of the things that this legislation does, it takes the lot size requirement and makes it uniform throughout the town at 20,000 square feet. And 20,000 square feet, just to get it into acres, that's about 0.46 of an acre. So if you have a half acre, then you would qualify. If you have a third of an acre, you do not qualify. But it's roughly a half acre, a little below a half acre under this qualification. We also changed the name from accessory apartments to accessory dwelling units in an attempt to get more people in homes. This legislation would allow not just apartments connected to the home, but disconnected to the home as well. And there are size requirements on that. And then we went through and we lined up our requirements for an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, for an ADU to align with our rental code. And we ran it past legal and code enforcement as well. And then there are some requirements there. One of the requirements in the former or the existing legislation, I should say, is that for every accessory apartment that is created, a development right would be extinguished. And this code would end that practice, and so the development rights would be left alone, which I know that is a concern. And so what we did here, and of course for the board's review, is we limited the number of apartment applications to 20 accessory dwelling units or apartments per school district per year, and with a maximum of 150 throughout the town per year. So with that, I'd like to kick it over to Kara and Janice. If you want to add anything else, there may be some things that that you want to add to this or not.
I just want to clarify one thing. You said that the lot size was based on income, and I only see it based on density.
Did I say income?
You said
Well, that
income.
was incorrect. The lot size is based
Okay.
on the size of the lot. In other words, to get an accessory apartment on a lot, you know, it's the size of the lot, not the income of the person.
So,
Now,
the way that the current law is that you need a lot size of 30,000 square
Mhm.
feet, or approximately 3/4 of an acre, unless you're in a census designated place where there's less than 500 people per square mile, then you could go down to 20,000 square feet or half an acre.
okay. So that density is what would trigger the size of the lot?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. So you pretty much covered it all. We just made a couple of other changes with regard to giving some flexibility with owners of the property who want to have an ADU, and maybe perhaps they're snowbirds. The proposed amendment permits an ADU to be constructed on property where the owner's federal tax return lists the principal dwelling or the ADU as their primary residence. Continuing, the principal dwelling unit or the ADU must still be the year-round residence of the tenant, but the proposed amendment requires that there will be no subletting of that unit permitted.
One permit per parcel.
One permit per parcel, yep, that's still the case. So a lot of these things is Councilman Scavone said that came about from the applications that we have seen with the New York State funding that we received on the +1 ADU program. Most of, I think it's about almost 30% of the applications, the lot size was too small. So that was one of the reasons that we worked on changing the lot size from the 3/4 of an acre down to half an acre.
And if I could interject here, currently, we have, since the legislation from 2018 was put in place, we have extinguished 9 credits throughout the town. So that means 9 apartments.
Yeah.
Okay.
We, as
Wait, can you talk about the credits?
So, one of the current law requires that a development right be extinguished in the school district where the accessory apartment is located.
This is, the town holds all these development, right?
Mhm.
We hold some.
CPF
we don't
purchases.
hold them
We don't hold them all.
Well, may I take
Yeah.
it? Development rights, it never fully made sense to require a full development right for an accessory unit, because
Mhm.
it's not a full development right. A house is a full development right, an accessory to a house is not a full development right. When we say you can have a carriage house, which we recently talked about, a carriage house is 2 dwellings on one lot, then you need a full development right.
Mhm.
An ADU of a certain size is
Mhm.
covered under the umbrella of the original development right of a parcel. So you don't, to bring in a second development right is almost wasting them.
Right.
Well, you could use them for better purposes.
How do you get through the Board of the Health
The
without?
health department doesn't see it as
Yeah,
that. So
right.
this way, what we're changing it to is consistent with what, the same interpretation of the health department, which is accessory dwelling units are not not secondary dwellings. They're accessory to, just like a garage.
But so what happens if you have like a husband and wife and a kid living in an accessory dwelling unit? That's a second family, that's not considered a second home?
No,
But we've always
It's
done
not.
we've always extinguished half of a credit.
A full
no,
credit.
full credit.
How-
We
Full
never
credit. So now
always
we're
did
I
that.
mean, I could see a
Reducing to
partial
half?
credit and not a
Right.
full credit, but I think
Yeah.
there should be.
The, just in terms of how we look at it, from a land use and planning perspective, it's accessory to, meaning the main dwelling home on a lot. So every lot comes with a bundle of development rights. We use this like stick analogy, a bundle of sticks. And you've got your clearing rights and your development right, and, all the, actually not development right, you can build a house, a sanitary system, a garage, a pool, a tennis court. All these things are like covered in your one lot development rights, right? As like we uphold people's private property rights to build things on their private property, and those are in that bundle of rights. So the accessory apartment is part of that. It's not a secondary use. It's a accessory to, just like a garage or a pool or a tennis court. It truly is, until you get to a certain size. Then what you're saying kicks in. Then we call it a carriage house. then you need the development right. So when you get past like the 2 bedrooms and you're turning it into a 3-bedroom home, then you call it
So a 2-bedroom home isn't a home, but a 3-bedroom home is a home.
Or does it go by square
It's
foot?
accessory to until it's not. And that, I'm just telling
What
you
is
how
the
it is. I
current-
mean, I didn't make
Tell
this
us
up.
the current law. Tell us the current law,
The
what's
current
required
law,
about
well,
that.
we had it the way we were talking earlier, where it's accessory to and it's not requiring a development right. Then, the last administration, there was a change to this law which said, we only will allow accessory apartments if they're affordable. They cannot even happen unless you're gonna make them affordable. We're not just like housing all of New York City here, like we want it to be that this is affordable. And then that development right argument got pulled into the end of that and that got required.
What does that mean? What do you mean? What was
Meaning that
required?
that it was new to require a development right for an accessory.
But was it a whole?
A full development
Okay,
right,
full
like a
development right.
brand, like a 300 gallon per day.
And that was put on in 2018.
Right.
But it
So
also
it gets
goes by-
extinguished. The town owns them or holds them and we
Yeah.
extinguish one for
We
each
don't always
one?
own them. People in the world of Southampton own their own development rights potentially. Like I could have 2 lots and 1 lot's vacant and I hold and I wanna cash in that development right. There's numerous amounts of circumstances.
And the
We
trade-off
don't
that
always
nothing would
own
ever
them.
happen on that lot.
But sometimes we do. And if we do own them and we own them and are able to give them for accessory apartments, we do that. We
We
have been doing
extinguish
them.
them.
But people are not coming in and extinguishing them. Things are not, it's not working. It's a very awkward, weird system because of this accessory nature of this. So we are trying to make it so that it works. Here, there's a threshold set in the
So
code
now we're
that
saying we
Councilman.
were
So I
Hold on,
think,
let me just
requiring
say,
half
we were
of the-
requiring it.
and now
Now,
we're saying we don't think we should
So-
extinguish a development right?
I think the original.
That's what the
Well,
code
anyway,
says,
yeah.
right.
Right.
I think the
The
original
proposed
intent
code.
behind that was to make sure that there was an equitable distribution of these throughout the township. And so now we're looking at it in a different way. We're saying, okay, instead of the extinguishment of a development right within a school district, we're limiting the number of accessory dwelling units that can be permitted within a school district to 20. So now.
Which is a lot.
There was
yeah.
never a limit before?
No, it's only the fact that you could only get your permit for an accessory dwelling unit if there was a development right available in the school district to be extinguished.
Right.
If that development right wasn't available, you couldn't get your accessory dwelling unit.
But
So-
isn't that part of the planning of why we did it?
It was, now
Isn't
we're,
that why it's tied to, you can
There's
only do
definite
it if it's in the
concerns of
school
density
district?
issues, and we can't, sugarcoat that. People are saying, wait a minute, you can't have this because it's another family living in the same area. But at the same time, it may not be another family. In most instances, it is the same person's family who needs a place to live. They are living in the accessory dwelling unit. It's their family, it's their mother, father, brother, cousin, somebody you're related to or know needs a place, and that's who's living there.
Family members with
They get exemptions after
disabilities.
exemptions because of the fact that it's usually just family. Because people who own the main house, the first person they want to even help out is their immediate family or friends. So there is this concern that we're just adding all this density and, not balanced out, but again, it's accessory, so it's limited in size and scale. And when you get to another size and scale, then you do require the development right, because then it falls under carriage house. So there's just this distinction, and that's up to you as policymakers to decide where
But
that's
wasn't it
level.
just starting out?
I have square footage, how much you can make.
Well, here, it's not allowed to exceed 1,200. If you wanna make it smaller, that's up to you, that's not us.
So I
The
have,
Square footage of the house, doesn't it go? So if the house is 3,000 feet, you can only have,
It's a minimum of 400 and a maximum of 1,000,
yeah.
right?
1,000,
And
not
then
1,200?
1,000, and no more than 50% of the floor area of the principal dwelling.
House.
so I have.
1,000 is
I have-
attached, 1,200
I have-
is
if
detached.
we go through this, I have a bunch of questions, but
Sure.
the main one being is, you're talking about half-acre zoning becoming quarter-acre zoning because you're putting 2 families on one property. And
May
my
not be a
concern with
family.
that is, let me just finish my thought. My concern with that is, in an already dense area, okay, and I live on a half-acre lot, and over the course of 3 years, 4 of my neighbors around me get a tiny home in their backyard. Now I have double the amount of families living in my square footage. What does that do to my property values? With, and I'm going to say this, with right now, with the governor putting through the good cause eviction bill and being nearly impossible after this goes through to evict somebody, and you end up as somebody in your backyard, basically, that's right over the fence, that's a nightmare, but nobody can get rid of them. The most complaints I get are in our densely populated hamlets in Hampton Bays, in Flanders, in Riverside, and these people are saying exactly what this is going to create is already happening in little sheds, in little cottages, in pool houses, and there's families living in them, and they are irate because they didn't move into an R20 zone with single-family residences to suddenly be surrounded by double the density, two times the amount of families living in these residences. And it causes a problem with parking, with garbage, with are you having 2 mailboxes on these properties? I mean, we can go on, and here it says that you have to have screening. There's no site plan on this. Who's gonna say if the screening is adequate, or where it should be, or where the parking space, there's no site plan review on this.
Now, it sounds like some of the concerns that you have are some of the illegal apartments that have been put up around the town because of the need.
And you think
for
that if
this.
we do it legally,
And
people
so-
are gonna rent them out
well,
the
what-
legal way, and it's all gonna be up and up, and it's
If
gonna
I
be
could
perfect?
finish my thought?
Sure.
So, I mean, what we are seeing that people are coming in for variances in these communities to get apartments, number one. Number two, because they have to come in for a variance, they don't qualify the same way other hamlets qualify for the aid that we are providing. And that, to me, is an inequity to the very hamlets that you're addressing. I'm not discounting what you're saying. I think this is a better way for our code enforcement to get our arms around those very situations. You have to, get it permitted.
If
And-
they need a variance, I, as a homeowner, who will have my property value effective, can go to a public hearing and have my concerns heard on why I do or do not approve with what's going in my backyard.
Well, some hamlets have to get variances, other hamlets do not. And
Because of
that to me-
density.
That to me is an inequity.
Because
And that's a
of
basic
density.
failure of the code the way it currently exists. I understand what you're saying, and as far as the good cause eviction, I think that's probably the worst case scenario here. I know that there are going to be concerns about this, as there should be, but we also have a inherent housing crisis. And in the very communities that you mentioned, we have illegal apartments that we don't even know about.
Yep.
So it's hard for us to, apply code enforcement to those areas because they're operating outside of the law. So, let's try to
If-
address it and get people in homes and get some of our young people to stay in our communities, to join the fire departments and, work in our schools.
And if you want to talk about inequity, where do I see these ADUs going? In the densest, most disadvantaged communities, because people are going to look for a way to make extra money. They're not going to be going in Sagaponack and Watermill and areas.
might.
They might, but
I would say they
the other
will.
issue I have is why now can you leave? It used to be that you had to be a year-round resident. The primary homeowner had to. Now you're saying you can leave seasonally. You don't think
So
that
there
they're
are
going to
people
seasonally
in
rent?
parts of the town who live in their home during parts of the year, and then they go to other places. And I wanted to make sure that if they had an accessory apartment on that property, right? You mentioned Watermill, you mentioned Bridgehampton. There are plenty of properties that have living dwelling units on the property, but they're not there during the wintertime. This way, that property can be used for people living and working here in the community. And not only that, it takes cars off the road. So, that's an important point, and that really goes to exactly what you're saying about some of these areas that would like to have people living on their property, because they're kind of hiring people to watch their property. If you can get someone living there, it kills a number of birds with one stone, if you will. It gets people living on the property and working and living in the school districts.
May I ask a question? Maybe this is for Kara,
Of
actually.
course.
Perhaps a clarification and maybe how this amendment would help some of the ADU application issues. So you mentioned that the ADU plus applications indicated that some of the applicants had lot sizes that were too small, correct, to qualify?
Yep.
So how specifically would this amendment affect that or enhance it, improve it?
So with regard to the funding, about 30% of the applications that we have seen coming through for this +1 ADU grant, which is, just to refresh everybody's memory, is it's a grant of up to $125,000 that New York State has worked with us to give to homeowners who are at the 100% of the area median income to build these ADUs. If the ADU stays in the program for 10 years, the loan is forgiven and it's a grant. So about 30% of the applications coming in are for lots that are undersized. So because we've had such a great response to the applications for this grant, they've been taking the people who have the undersized lots and kind of putting them aside and dealing with the applications that automatically lot size complies first. And the reason for that is because New York State has given CDLI, who is administering the program for us, some very strict timelines to meet. And so they're working with the people that already comply. The other people will have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a variance for their lot size, and then if there is funding left, they
Go
would.
back.
And would you give a
And so we
definition
could-
of undersized for
So-
hamlets, right, the inequity in
Right,
undersized?
so currently you need a lot size of 30,000 square feet or 3/4 of an acre, unless you're in a census designated place where there are 500 people per square mile, then the lot size can be 20,000 square feet or half an acre. So if an applicant for the +1 ADU program does not meet those requirements, their lot size is under 30,000 square feet or 3/4 of an acre, or they're not located in one of those census designated places, and their lot size is, not 20,000 square feet, then their application would be put aside by CDLI.
And so this amendment would shift their responsibility of having to go to ZBA and get a variance. This would make it more streamlined.
Yeah, so for those applicants where their lot size is undersized, they would no longer, if they are at half an acre, 20,000 square feet, they would then be eligible, and they would not have to go to ZBA to get a variance.
Thank you. That was
Although
a
they
very,
could. I mean, we're not saying people can't still get variances, right? So you're
Correct.
They
reducing
could.
the lot size, and then they could still get a variance for even less.
That's correct.
And we see a lot of those at
And
the ZBA.
You're only
I'd like-
requiring an area variance, not a use variance.
Correct. Yep.
could I just
So-
ask one last question to my stream of thought?
Okay.
Because this goes to, Tommy John, this goes to Cindy's concerns, and I think, I'll ask this to Kara, because I think you might be able to answer this, and your previous answer was very clear and helpful, by the way. This amendment, I think you could make the argument, actually adds additional regulatory constraints, given that it is requiring no more than 20 new accessory dwelling units per school district, right? Is that, because the previous was, the way it was previously written, was it more, or?
So
There was no limit.
Yeah, so
There
there
was no
was,
limit.
there was no limit. The only real limitation would be is if there wasn't a development right to be extinguished in the school district.
Right.
So we looked at it another way. In order to keep the equitable distribution throughout the township, we looked at it as, instead of, going through the process of extinguishing a development right, how else can we ensure that there would be equitable distribution? Well, by limiting the number within a school district.
Right.
And some of the other local townships use that method as well.
So Cindy, I mean, in some ways, this actually adds a layer of regulation.
So Southampton School District, that is starved for kids, could have no more than 20 units per year. But Hampton Bays, that has an increase in pupil population, could now have also 20 per year, which, not saying they couldn't under the previous law, but it was based on lot size. And, I mean, I have a lot of questions on this, and I mean, we could go through, and there's a lot of stuff in here that was taken out. You no longer need a lease. Why don't you no longer need a fully executed lease? was removed. It
It's
says,
still-
Just to correct a
Documentation.
couple of statements here, the Hampton-Bays School District, 10 years over 10 years increased by 12 students. I mean, it's staying pretty flat. You know. I mean, your point is, well taken,
I
but
mean,
it hasn't
the point-
increased incredible amounts.
it made, the density
and these-
regulation made way more sense to me because
Well,
you're
I-
not limiting how many units can go in Southampton School District because they have an abundance of resources that they're looking for students.
Right,
Why would you
as
limit them
are
to
a
20
number of our
units?
schools. In fact, Hampton Bays is kind of an anomaly that it's staying static
It's
in
20
its
per
numbers.
year as like a kind of a growth management tool. So
And
that
so-
you're only growing within a certain level of time, so everything kind of gets acclimated instead of like, a
Okay.
boom.
So
how
for
do
the
you
board's
answer the people, though,
edification,
that want to know what happens to
if
their
I could,
property values
Councilwoman?
when they have these all over?
I think there was some appraisal information done with CDC Long Island. Did they do anything like that when it came to, I'm sorry, excuse me. when
I
it
was
came
asking a
to-
question. What was the
appraisal?
question?
She was saying, property
removed.
value
You can go
impacts,
through
does
it.
it
Yeah, but I
Page one.
increase property values?
It's on the
or
first page.
Has there been any evidence that it
Okay.
decreases
I have one
property
quick
values?
question too. to that.
I'd like to just kind of, since we're on school districts, in East Quogue, 54% of the parcels would be affected by this. In other words, 54% of the parcels could actually apply for this, for an accessory dwelling unit. Eastport South Manor, 67%. Hampton Bays, 39% of the properties are over the 4.6, the size of 4.6 acres. And in the Riverhead School District, 35%. So it's not a widespread thing. Well, it would be throughout the hamlet, but those are the percentages of the parcels that would be affected. That could actually apply for this without a variance.
My question is, how many permits did you actually get applied for last year?
I don't know, actually, I don't have that information about how many were actually applied for,
And
but,
how many were given out?
yeah, we have a total of, what was it, 9? That
Nine.
It
did
was
it?
very low.
So you're not talking
Since-
like hundreds, that's
Since
right.
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I remember I actually got, before you told me it was like 9, 8, 6 each year, so you're not talking
But-
hundreds of permits.
Bill, last year was the first year that there was funding available to
Yeah,
build
so-
them,
Yeah.
Right.
which is going to
Which really got us thinking about this code and how it's frankly unequal between our hamlets.
So,
And people have already come in and gotten the precedent is set for, basically, the ZBA has been granting variances for the CUP.
But like I said, then the adjoining property owners at least have an avenue to air their concerns because there's a public hearing process.
Sure, I mean, we could add something to the code that says that they have to put a buffer, like, and you'll check it, without any, so like, that's the most you can really say as an adjoining property owner in most cases is I just don't wanna see it or hear it, right? Like, I don't want it to bother me.
I think that's a reasonable suggestion, and maybe if we are to change this to make it more amenable here, maybe looking at the number of new accessory dwelling units, section F on the first page, or could that, rather than a lower number, given that different school districts have different needs, could that number reflect the school district's, max?
Instead of making it a uniform 20, do something with that.
How do you add all this on half-acre lots with no environmental impacts then?
And septic,
It's accessory to,
But I
it's-
mean, let's face it, nobody ever thought that there'd be second families living on single-family lots. Like, that's, to me, not an accessory use is a pool house that's used by your family, it's a garage, it's a shed, it's a greenhouse, it's not a dwelling unit for another family to reside in.
although I'm not sure if it's always a family, like you're saying a family. It could be a single
But it
guy.
could be a
It
family.
doesn't have to be a family.
But it could be a
It
family.
could be a family, but it's not necessarily a
single
family.
person.
Met a gentleman who's moving out of the area, he's looking for a place, and he's leaving.
I'm not, listen,
he's a
I am
single
not,
guy.
I'm not bemoaning the fact, I understand that there is a housing
Okay, then
crisis,
let's
but you
not dismiss
cannot
it.
solve a housing crisis without taking environmental concerns into
100%.
consideration.
Well, we would
And
not-
I don't think on half-acre lots, making single-family lots double, for two families, I mean, we don't live in Brooklyn for a reason, right? We live out here because it's single-family homes, single families, living on lots, enjoying their backyards. And I just don't see I mean, this has been working. We just applied funding to it.
So-
I don't
my
want
question
to
is,
seem
why
like
not-
I'm arguing.
No,
in
I-
some
I-
way. It's like you're saying this to me,
Janice,
I'm not, this is
I
my
think-
code. I just didn't want to make it clear.
This is me.
We
So
have a
I-
hard
I'd like
time,
to-
we
if
have
I
a
could-
hard time enforcing our current rental laws
Let's
without
address this.
adding 150 more units a year that are rented out.
Sure,
Okay.
I just want to make sure, one thing.
Janice,
before-
please.
Please, I defer to you.
You guys are kind of like,
Yeah, I just
you know, some of these accessory dwelling units, some of them, we were designed to be standalone. You know, like another structure, either in a garage or in a backyard, you know, within the code. Also, it can be part of the existing structure as well. That's something that people overlook. You know, an older individual who wants to create an apartment accessory dwelling unit in the existing house, they can do that with alterations, and this covers that as well and allows them to do it.
That's quite a different scenario if you're gonna use
Yeah,
the
it's not
existing
always
house.
detached.
It
It's
is,
also
but it's,
allowed.
but I
That's
just
not
want,
And I get that.
I would like that to be
That's the
part of this
common.
conversation because it is part of the conversation. Also, one of the changes that was made in this code, that was a change from the previous code, was how much people could ask in rent. It used to be 80% of AMI, and now we've changed it to 130%. So homeowners, we want people to do, I want people to do this. I want our young people to have the ability to stay in our communities and whatnot. So homeowners for an efficiency apartment could ask up to $2,200 a year. And like for a one bedroom, $2,700. So it's not, you know, it's real money, and it's real money for the homeowners. I know folks are having trouble, you know, making ends meet in a lot of places on Long Island, and this would help them do that. So you were gonna say,
This has
and
really
I-
been in existence since 1992, the accessory apartment. The only
Right.
real big change was that it was now going to just be for eligible income people, like in terms
Mm-hmm.
of up to 100, which is, how much income is that for?
130% AMI.
130% is generally, you know, you could get, if it's 2 bedroom, that means you're making that
No,
60,
so
no?
if, at 130% of the area median income for a family of 2, it's $162,000.
Okay.
So I mean, that's a lot of money that people, it's not like, you know, that's the upper threshold.
This is not just under the program where the town provides grant funding, right? That's anybody.
This is
can-
just generally, you know, all of us have seen someone who had a house and it was always like, there's an access, like, shh, don't tell anyone, but there's this like cool apartment as part of their house. And now it's like, why does this have to be a secret? Like, you could have this legally and build it safely and put someone in there who's properly vetted, and that's really what this is all about.
And that's
The
been part of
answer-
the code since
the
you
answer
said
is yes.
1992, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's-
since
it's
1992, we have had accessory apartments. in
And
those.
Jim,
separate-
it should be noted that
Doesn't have to
our,
be affordable.
our
No,
grant
yeah.
program is under our code. And it's, in my opinion, somewhat limiting to various hamlets because of the size regulations of the parcels.
Now it has to be affordable.
It has to be affordable, that was what the last administration, so, you know, what
And
if they weren't affordable?
$2,700.
It actually tells you you have to remove it.
But that $2,700 a month is affordable.
I don't think
It's-
that's affordable,
So
personally.
it's, for a one-bedroom, it's
No.
2,040.
What?
2,040 would be the maximum rent for a one-bedroom. For a
You can always-
two-bedroom, it would be 2,300.
You, as to the
So-
discretion of the homeowner, can always charge what they
Less.
want, but less, but they can't charge more.
That's, yeah, that's the
I'm
max.
sorry, I must have misunderstood. I thought Councilman Scrivoni said
Yeah.
2,700.
So I think that the previous administration was under the belief that, you know, if you're getting an accessory dwelling unit, then you should be giving something back. And that would be to make sure that that dwelling unit, that accessory dwelling unit, was affordable in its rent, and that the tenant that was living in that income qualified. And so that was put in under the last administration. That, in the new proposals here, that would stay. That would still be a requirement, that the dwelling unit be an affordable rental.
In
Provides it.
perpetuity?
Yes.
It
And the
probably
tenant
provi-
has to be income
The
qualified.
tenant has to be income qualified, and the rent being charged has to be affordable.
Janice, what happens to the septic on these properties?
So the health department lets you have an accessory apartment up to these size limits, and you have to size your septic accordingly. So let's say, yeah, and that goes up to 5 bedrooms. So if you have a sanitary system and you have 3-bedroom ranch and you want to add a 1-bedroom apartment, you're good. Like your sanitary system will cover that. The health department would require you to upgrade your sanitary system to get to up to 5 bedrooms, like 3 and 2, you have 4 and 1. But once you go past 5, you have to put in an IA system. And that's
What about the separate ADUs?
The ADU is covered under, if it's a detached, you
Yeah,
can still do a conventional, but the health department also looks at where your sanitary system is located, and if there's a way to tie the two in and require you to potentially do an IA system, they are doing that.
If the separate ADU brings your total amount of bedrooms on the site to more than 5, then
IA
the same
has to
thing
do the
applies.
I mean, because we upzoned in the APOD, so now we're just basically doubling density and using conventional septic and putting more waste in, I mean, it just,
I don't know, that's really the fundamental definition of accessory versus a primary, you know, and that is, if it is considered 2 dwellings on a lot, then we do require the development right. When you get to a certain size, it does fall into that category, and then we will require the development right.
I mean, I
Up
can
to
see,
that point,
I
it's
honestly, I can
considered
see,
accessory.
I can see not requiring it if it's attached to your house and it's part of your home, like you have a basement apartment, that I can, you know, I can kind of understand. But to say you can have a tiny house in, you know, on the lot and not have that required development unit, when you could technically have a family living there, is just,
This doesn't require it to be attached?
No,
No.
it's at your,
People-
you know, it really comes down to how the lot is. It's hard to, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, because it's hard to know what somebody's gonna be up against in
Right,
terms
right,
of how
right.
their lot is, or what their own objectives are for their own property.
So what we did with the new proposals is we kind of separated them out with regard to size. So if you have a standalone ADU, the size, minimum size is 400 square feet, the maximum is 1,000. If it's an attached ADU, mean part of the existing structure, the minimum size is 400 square feet, maximum 1,200. And it still has to conform to all the setbacks under the zoning code, and it can't be more than 50% of the size of the main dwelling. So if you have, you know, I don't know, 1,800 square foot house,
Yeah.
you could only go up to 900.
I mean, my,
50% is pretty generous, though, because accessory generally, we limit people
my
to like
first
30%.
two-bedroom ranch in
Right, right.
Hampton
So
Bays
I
wasn't
think
1,000 square
50%
feet.
Mine
is
was
generous,
850.
if you want to
Yeah,
think
I mean-
about that.
I mean,
you
my,
know.
my first home, my starter home, a two-bedroom ranch in Hampton Bays was under 1,000 square feet.
What page
So,
is that, Janice?
to say that you can have that as an
G1?
accessory on a
I'm sorry,
property
yeah.
is,
IA3.
Okay. Thank you.
G1 says no,
1,200.
a minimum of 400, maximum of
50%.
50%, not to exceed 1,200. I mean, you could say.
that's saying you could put a
maximum-
two-bedroom ranch on your property.
Right, I mean.
as an
I'm not-
accessory.
I,
Well,
you
that's
know,
the attached.
Depending
something
on the
you
size
all
of the house.
decide
Yeah,
on.
so if you have a giant house, you could put a two-bedroom ranch in the backyard as an accessory
Right,
and have a
but-
family living in a
Well,
two-bedroom
the-
ranch.
The 1,200 is attached, right? That's the attached.
1,200.
1,200 is attached, 1,000 is detached.
That is pretty
Detached.
large. That is,
That's
and
big.
1,200 is pretty large.
I mean,
Well-
personally, I looked into putting one
the
of these
size
in
of my
my, but I have a different,
Well,
you
I
know,
think
much
Tommy-
larger lot,
So-
and it wasn't worth it unless it was at least 9. When you really start looking at like, well, the bathroom and the bedrooms and the kitchen, it's like, it's hard to build something so small and it to be really worth it.
So IA
it
requirements-
does need a little bit of leeway, but it's up to you how big you think it should be.
IA requirements would still be in place, innovative alternative wastewater treatment systems, if a home on a property or an accessory was included to be above 50% of the dwelling. They could be required to put in an IA system
Which
in the
they-
1 to 2 year travel time,
Which they couldn't get funding for.
which they could get a grant for from the town of Southampton.
How?
And
It's new development. It's new density.
it's
See,
on an
that's the
existing lot.
fundamental issue, though. It's considered, and when we say accessory, that's not, even though practically that, I understand what you're saying, but like in the realm of like the legality of things, accessory to is enveloped in that one development type.
I think that fundamentally, I have a
Understand.
block on thinking of a separate residence as an accessory to a residence.
It happens all day long, every day. There's people living in, you know.
But I think that
they
where
use
we
pool houses
live,
and guest houses.
I don't
and-
think
Garages.
people think about living next to two homes.
Sure, and,
Well,
but
and
the-
don't-
you don't necessarily, you're assuming also that everything is this detached everything. We were also talking about, you have a detached garage with an apartment above, you have a basement apartment, you added a
think-
piece onto your house. There's all different configurations, so I think your biggest issue is with the detached one. But the attached or
like
the
it's-
basement or above a garage or in an attic type of
Because I think that's how
setting
people
isn't
process
bad.
apartments, you know,
Right.
like, it's a basement apartment, it's an apartment above a garage, it's something that fits on the property, and it's not a separate dwelling unit for a separate group of people.
That's why we changed it to accessory dwelling unit, so that those options would be available to
I
people.
think maybe we need like a lot more visuals.
Or
as
if
to
you, or
how
if you
this
go
looks.
to, or if you go to an accessory dwelling unit, the lot size needs to be way bigger. Like, maybe you can't put
you know,
accessory
don't have a
units
standalone.
on a half-acre lot.
Right, so the half acre is more about the detached garage and the apartments.
A lot of
within.
people have asked for the tiny houses and the
On a
accessory
half-acre
dwelling
lot, I'm
units, more
sorry, I
so
don't
that
think you're
we're.
entitled.
I'm sorry, what? You-
On a half-acre
Well, I'm
lot, I
speaking.
don't think you're entitled to a separate dwelling on your half-acre.
Thank you, Councilwoman, appreciate it. And what we're
Go
trying
for
to
a
do
variance.
is also, address a housing crisis and a traffic crisis, in the town of Southampton. And this does that. We're screaming for laborers. We can't get people, not just laborers, we can't get people to work in the town of Southampton or various school districts. Businesses are hurting for employees because they have to drive here from points west. We would like to get people in this community who are working in this community.
So we're doubling density west of the canal when we had 3 individuals at the Traffic Mitigation Task Force yesterday.
Well, that's quite,
ask for
I
a
think
full
that's
building
an over,
moratorium.
that's an overstatement to say you're doubling density west of the
On
canal.
a lot of these lots, you'll be doubling density.
Well,
so-
on an individual lot, but please don't overstate this to tell the world that
Okay,
we're
so the
doubling
build-out, when
density
does
west of
this
the canal.
end?
That is an irresponsible statement, Councilwoman.
No, it's
Come
not,
on.
because at 20
We're
units a
trying
year.
to get people in
At 20
homes.
units a year, how long before you build out the scenario?
Well, what if no one does it? It could just be 10 units or 1 unit.
Here's what I'm
Which is
saying,
what's
we have a
happening-
law on the books.
Which is what's happening now, and people are going toward illegal options to what you addressed
And if you
earlier.
think that
That's
illegal options are
enforcement.
not gonna, if you think people are gonna fall in line with this, the illegal options are still gonna exist, and this is gonna be on top of those illegal options. That's what's gonna happen. Those people aren't gonna come in and miraculously want everything on their property legalized.
I've heard differently, but okay. There are
Okay.
people who have accessory apartments that are illegal that would love to make them legal.
They do exist,
So,
yes.
it's anecdotal information that we hear, from people in these
I
communities.
just don't know how you put 2 houses on a half-acre lot.
I think
it's
that
not a
we should
duplex, it
parse
is
out like
accessory.
the detached rules and maybe look at those a little more closely. But would you agree that the attached configurations or above
And
a
split 'em up
garage?
might be better.
They make
maybe-
sense.
Okay, all right, so let's just maybe
Yeah.
separate the 2 issues. One is, we all can agree that if someone has a house and they wanna put, say they have even a walkout basement, even better, and they wanna turn that into a
Your mother, daughter. type
mother
house,
door,
great
that might
friends.
be fine. Or something above the garage, etc. Fine. And then we should have a separate set of a little bit more stringent rules surrounding detached
Larger
potential,
lot sizes.
which may include larger lot size, how it's configured on the lot, buffers, fences, making sure that it's not going to impact a neighborhood. and
Can we make
community.
those go through a site plan review?
Single-family homes typically don't go through site plan review, but we can think about that and see.
They
can-
still have
it really
restrictions
comes down
about
to talking
setbacks
to-
and buffers, right?
Sure. See, because they're ministerial acts, when you come for a permit, there's not a lot of discretion at the counter in that way. We're just looking at like, do you meet the construction, the uniform building, fire prevention, et cetera. When we, it's not that we can't. So I just want to assure you, we can look into it with the legal department and just see how to make that a little bit more rigorous of a review, get it to planning, because it doesn't happen over the counter or through a building permit process. It has to happen through planning. So we can I think it's it's something so important that we should address your issues and address the community's concerns and make sure that we're doing this in a way that you are meeting the objectives but is sensitive. We don't wanna
And addressing
suddenly
community
create,
concerns
you
about
know, a hodgepodge.
creating housing.
Right, and we're trying to have, I think we need some more visuals,
As I said,
more
you're also
understanding of how
dealing
this
with-
would look, feel, be, and we're
You're
happy to
dealing
do
with-
that.
You're
And I can
dealing with
guarantee you,
parking,
the
you're
woman who
dealing
spoke
with
to me yesterday about
mail.
looking for an apartment is not gonna come to this board and ask this. It just doesn't happen. And so, you know, we're addressing a need for a portion of the community who does not come to these meetings and, you know, ask for different legislation for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But we need them here in our community, and we need to represent them.
It
So,
used to be that you could just, you know, when I first came to work here 20 years ago, you could just pick and choose. There was apartments down this road in Elm Street. Every one of those houses have apartments in them. You know, there's apartments all around this village, and it used to be easy. And now you couldn't even touch one of those apartments.
well, the market is such where single families have purchased the homes, they extinguish the apartments, and, you know, then they're here part of the time.
Well,
And they
right,
can't get an
so-
apartment and someone living on there, which they
But I mean, you wouldn't
historically have
even
had.
know that many of these homes just right here, and they're on tiny little lots that they have actually, they're, you know, 2 apartments or whatever. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we just need maybe a lookbook and feel a little more standards in terms of detached rules,
Yeah, I think-
and then maybe we can work through those issues and.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I worry about something, like a community like Hampton Bays, if it's already so densely populated, and maybe there are some people there that would benefit from being able to have an ADU, they could get the extra income, but then if it's a family, then it's gonna add to the schools, so then the community as a whole is bearing the burden that, you know, one person's getting some extra income, but everybody else's taxes will go up because there's more children in the school.
I mean,
So
there's
that-
no way
that
in
part
Albany to have
concerns
like an
me.
occupancy tax or something, like that's really in the end something that I think everybody's kind of dancing around and talking about is the amount of people in a given home or place. Really, that's what it comes down
I
to.
think that's where you run into the issues, and especially in places like Hampton Bays and Flanders with, you know, 7, 8 cars in the driveway and, you know, then guests coming over, and the neighbors all have to absorb that, you know? It's a quality of life issue. And as much as, yes,
Happening in my
there is a-
neighborhood too.
there-
It's
there
all
is a,
over.
there is a housing crisis, there is, but we have to have this balancing act between the housing crisis, the environment, and people's quality of life.
No doubt about that. That's the whole name of the game when it comes to zoning. That's what we're doing here. So, I can't disagree, but I also think it's so important that you provide, like, Councilman Scavone saying, a safe, decent place for people so they don't overcrowd a house. And they
And
don't,
so we went to
you know,
great
try to
lengths
live in
to-
a shed or in a.
We went to
wherever.
great lengths to try to parse out different areas of the community, and frankly, it is not working. We don't have the amount of accessory apartments that we need to house some of our young folks in this community.
Almost everyone
So,
who's
I
come for
mean,
the
the same,
CDP is
your-
from
the
Hampton
same
Bays.
reasoning existed in
They need the money.
2018. We put a piece of code in place, and people are not using it. And they're going to illegal means. Or we're making it incredibly onerous for them to put accessory apartments in by, you know, going to the zoning board, which is a lot for, you know, people to do. They go to the zoning board and have to do all that stuff and, you know, surveys and whatnot, and then come to a meeting and hire an attorney. I mean, you know, it's restrictive. So it sounds like the board is not too keen on detached units. Is that, you know, what I'm
I guess
hearing?
it
Is
depends
that,
on the size
you
of the
know-
lot, maybe, that could make a difference.
Right, well, that was something that, you know, I wanted to make uniform throughout the town, because I think it is inherent structural inequity in our funding sources that we are granting people in the community. Frankly, there are some folks in some communities that can get no-interest loans, and some folks in other communities that cannot. And that, to me, is wrong, and it's a violation of, I don't know, the 14th Amendment. It's just, you know, it's
But
equal,
everybody can
unequal
get it, they
treatment,
just have to go through the process of
among
a
the
variance.
law. So, but we're putting different parameters on people in different hamlets, and that, to me, is also structurally wrong. And so we're trying to, you know, work on this. So it sounds like the detached units, the board has issues with, and would like to take a closer
Well, here's what doesn't
look.
make sense to me is that to get what they call a carriage house, which could be, what, 3-bedroom house, right? Or anything, 1, 2, 3 bedroom. You need 3 acres. You need a 3-acre lot if you want to put a
No.
carriage house on your property. That's what we were, I thought that's what we were looking at
3
the
acres,
other day.
other lots are eligible, not just 3 acres. No, that was a specific one, and it said, in the
Oh.
3-acre zone, here's
In
your
the
criteria.
3-acre
But
zone.
no, it's not, you
But
need
here
3
we're saying you can build a second house even if you have a half an acre.
No,
That
we're,
just seems like.
Accessory dwelling
It's
unit.
accessory
Yeah,
dwelling.
we're calling it
It's
an
not.
accessory dwelling unit, but it's like a standalone little house.
So, let me just ask
It
you
is
this
a small
question.
house, right,
So if I
and
have a
with a
half
bathroom
acre
and a
lot
kitchen.
in Hampton Bays with no clearing restrictions, I can probably get that dwelling unit on my property. If I live in East Quogue on a half an acre and I'm in the APOD and I have clearing restrictions on my property, I may not be able to get that.
Yeah.
So now it's become a question of, do we let the
Depending on
clearing
where you put
restrictions
it.
go? Because that's too restrictive? And it's not fair because I have clearing restrictions that I can't have that lot, but somebody who doesn't have clearing restrictions can have that? I mean, this is where we're getting into. If we're
I don't
getting
believe
into
the supposition is so
people
cut
with
and
size
dry.
lots
There
aren't
are
able
options
to.
within the clearing zone to place these things. I mean, you're
I-
going to, like, then you can't, but that may or may not be the case.
You could have a situation where you say the detached ones have to go through a planning process. And
But
that would make
but
you
what
more
I'm
comfortable.
saying is
The
if-
clearing restrictions have to do with aquifer protection and impervious
Yes.
surface areas. And so we would argue that you need more clearing restrictions.
And the
not less.
point I'm getting at is, if you want to make it fair for everybody across the board, you're going to have to let go of a lot more than just density and just having to get a variance for things, because there's a lot of other things that come into play in other areas that are going to be an issue for people.
Right. I mean, that's, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then
And yes, I do want to make it fair across the board, absolutely. And I do want to see people in homes, and I do want to make it so our young people can live and work and be in our
So maybe
communities.
that part is
So they
going
can
to
get
come-
houses and work here, to work their way
I
up
just
to
don't
get
understand
houses.
why you're limiting Southampton to 20 units a year when there is more land and more availability in their school and they're starving for students.
Well, I'm glad that you would like to increase that, because I would agree with you, and I think maybe we could search for a standard for different school districts.
Like a density standard?
What?
Like a density standard?
You mocked me.
I'm just asking if
So,
that's the standard we're
we
going
certainly
for.
can, look at different school districts and have requirements for the number of accessory dwelling units per school district.
The density thing is somewhat abstract, even though people like to hold on to that, and it's important, but like, you're also just trying to respond to how people want to live their lives. Like, there's just this element of like, life is happening, people need a place to live nearby their jobs. They don't have the means to afford a home here.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
But
And
part
that
of
really
it too
comes down
is,
to it.
that bothers me a little bit is that, there was a definite rationale behind the transfer of development rights and the Pine Barrens credits,
Mhm.
and it's almost like now we're saying, well, we're just gonna ignore that, and there was there for environmental reasons, so
It's
I
only
just
been
need
there
to
for,
think some
that's a
more
new
about,
addition.
taking, not extinguishing the.
It's a new addition.
what's
That
a
was
new
added,
addition?
the.
The development right, and it's
the
not
ch-
sustainable,
extinguishing
there's
of
only
the
so many
development right.
development rights, and then what happens? They come
And they're
for
quite
variances
valuable.
and say, I can't get a development right, there are none available, and then they'll get a variance.
And maybe that's the time to stop.
What I was hearing from people,
you
what I
know.
was hearing from people, Kara, and you can correct me if I'm wrong
You
on
guys
this.
are in charge here.
When
So
we
you
when we
determine.
put this into place and it wasn't taking off and people weren't doing these units, what I wasn't hearing from people was, I don't want to do this. What I was hearing from people are, you're telling me how much rent I can charge for a unit, and the building prices are so out of whack out here that I can't afford to build a unit and be able to rent it for what you're telling me I then have to rent it for. Now we're providing funding, and we've been to this 1 year to see where this is going with how many people are applying and where they're applying, and I say let's give this a chance with the funding source in place, because it does take a lot of the stuff that we're now tossing out, like, we're tossing out the baby with the bathwater. There's stuff in here that makes sense. Having a homeowner have to be on presence year round, because now you have a tenant, and that was a big issue with, there's no saying that person isn't going to then go off for the summer and do a summer rental. And yes, it's not permitted, but there's nothing to stop them from doing that, because now you're saying
Well, you could say
they
that
don't
about
have to
most of our
reside there.
laws. If people are breaking the laws, yes, it's not permitted.
Well,
but
people are
sometimes they
breaking the
do.
laws right now, and it's
Excuse me?
very hard to enforce.
So if I may,
And by the way, just as far as the income, and this is important, I'm sorry, Councilman Useli, but we are changing the numbers to allow up to 130% of the area median income. So the rents could go up. Thank you for bringing that up. Michael, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. So, Kara, based on the work that we're doing with CDLI, our ADU program, do you find this could be potentially interruptive, or no, this would actually aid or enhance the program?
Well, it would make more people eligible for the funding.
Right.
For sure, because.
But
like
how
I
much
said-
funding are we gonna have? I mean, that's the other thing. I thought we were limited. What do we get per year?
So we just got another round of 2 million from CDLI, from the New York State that CDLI will be administering
And
for
we
us.
give 125,000 per person?
Up to 125,000 per person. They don't know whether or not there'll be a third round of funding, but we had anticipated that
That's 16 units a year
Right, and they're limited to
for the whole
20.
town.
That's right.
We're also adding now
Well,
CHF
that's why
funds
it's
to
not
that.
like
I was just
we're
gonna say, yeah.
doubling the density overnight, that's just not necessary.
No, but we're
But
adding,
this says
so it's up
20
to
in any one
150 a
school
year.
district, not the whole town.
Right,
Correct.
150 for the
whole
town.
Yeah, but we only have the money for 16 units.
We're adding
Only
CHF.
through New York State, the grant funding. So the Community Housing Fund, we're anticipating doing a companion program to
Right.
this.
So that would be 31,
So
32.
we had talked
units
about
per year.
first doing kind of a pilot program of $1.25 million initially designating towards this companion program, and then seeing how that goes. The difference between the +1 ADU program and the CHF companion program would be that the +1 program has an income limit on the homeowner at 100% of the area median income, whereas the CHF companion program would have no income limit on the homeowner. So anybody who wants to build an ADU, regardless of their income, could apply for the funding. And the other difference is that +1 ADU program, that is a grant at the end of the 10-year period, as long as they've been in compliance with what they need to. Whereas the town's CHF funding, that would have to be paid back. It's a loan, but it would be a no-interest loan being paid back over a 20-year period. The whole intent behind it is to make it, as you said, make it affordable for somebody to do this,
So they can rent it for.
so they can rent it for.
Yeah, so, but if we match the state, that would pay, those two pots of money would pay for 32 units per year for the entire town.
Currently, right.
And
Right.
we're saying
And then people could
20
still do them privately.
And
per school district.
it should
That's
also be
100.
noted that those 32 units are more available in some hamlets than they are in the ones that were brought up. And that, to me, is a major issue. The same person with the same lot in Hampton Bays gets treated differently than the same person with the same lot in West Hampton or Watermill. And that, to me, needs to be corrected. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do here. And yes, we need more money for this stuff. And I think, we're beginning.
I mean, I'd honestly, if you're gonna go that way, I'd rather do everybody at 30,000 square feet.
Oh, you would like to make it more restrictive throughout the town?
No, if you're gonna say that you're
3/4
not
of an
okay and
acre?
you wanna go down to
Okay.
20,000
That's what it
square
is
foot
now.
lots. That's what it is now in some areas.
30, I thought now that.
It's
it was
30,000,
In places like
30,000.
Hampton Bays, it's 30,000 square feet for
Right.
most.
which is my point, and in other areas, it's 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a half acre in West Hampton, you qualify more than you would in Hampton Bays. How do we square that as a board, as a legislature? To me, it's
They are
different.
the ones that come for the variances from that standard, by the way. Most of the people are Hampton Bays and most
But
of
then,
it
like
is
I
for
said,
their
if-
family.
At least there is a process that they can go through, and there is a process by which the neighbors can weigh in, and
We could
Yeah.
do that through the
Spend
planning
an extra
process instead of a zoning
$3,200
board
in 6
process.
months.
If that would make you more comfortable, we can sketch that out, and that's your
You
responsibility.
say the process is in place, but we're putting the process in place for some people and not others. And that's something that we just I believe we cannot ignore.
this was designed to basically try to push these units east of the canal, to get people off the roads, to put units where we need people to be and not
Right.
traveling through.
And effectively, it's not working the way we wanted.
Because we haven't had money to apply to it until last year.
Right, so now we do, and now we're treating our hamlets different. I'm repeating myself.
But when
People
you're
in
telling
Hampton
me
Bays
that
aren't
everybody in
eligible
Hampton
for the
Bays,
money.
so you're
That's
you're
basically
putting
it.
people in Hampton Bays where you're adding traffic.
But they're the ones asking to do it, the people who own the properties.
There are many, and we're
And
telling
this
them.
is where I
Is
get
that-
at. You're
is it-
gonna get
so,
at.
wait, for the AD, you're talking about the ADU Plus program?
Yes.
Okay, so are the majority applicants from Hampton Bays?
No, it's actually, we've seen it pretty widespread throughout the town.
No,
different
it's
areas.
the ZBA is what I'm talking about, to get it.
For
or
variances
this standard,
generally.
yeah.
But many of the folks from Hampton Bays are not applicable because they have to get a variance, and we have time restrictions, and they get put to the bottom of the pile.
We have about almost 30% of the applicants have not been eligible due to their lot size. I haven't really checked to see where they're located, that 30%.
Then do they go to
That's
the
sort of like three
ZBA?
people.
Do they mostly all
So
go?
there's
So
29
they're-
applications.
And if you live in a village, you're not affected by this.
Yeah.
By the way.
They are, what CDLI is, they will go through the ZBA process with them, but because the funding is limited, they're taking care of the people that don't need the variances first.
And is our ZBA granting these on a regular?
They've been pretty liberal in granting the variances.
And I'm going to tell you once again that the people of Hampton Bays are going to come in because rightfully so, this is all happening in our hamlets.
And-
The people that are asking for it want them.
How many villages
Yeah.
have ADU laws on the books? Does
That's a
North
good
Haven?
question. That's a good question.
They don't. They do not allow people to live in accessory
Oh,
dwellings.
you know the answer.
I do know the question to it.
Yeah, I think North Haven
you-
just
I-
did
I live in the
something
village of North
recently,
Haven,
though.
just
I
so
saw
everybody-
something in the,
You have to get a variance.
it just comes down to a variance is usually an area variance, not a use variance, like we said. So it's a standard, a deviation from the zoning you're setting in place. So you don't wanna, your zoning is incorrect if everybody has to go get a variance from it. So you wanna set the parameters that you see fit, so that people can do what you want, or what they wanna do, right? Like, to some degree, they should be able to live their lives the way they see fit, as long as it's not harming anyone adjacent, like you said.
And like I said,
So-
that's where we have to find the balance
Right.
between quality of life, the environment, and quality of life.
Okay, so with this legislation, I'd like to poll the board here a little bit. As far as the attached apartments, like in a garage and inside a structure, as opposed to detached, does the board want to see some more work done in that area?
So,
I mean, I like the code, I think we can put it forward, but, you know, I mean, if the board,
well,
if there's issues there, then, you know, let's discuss that and get some of the ideas on the table. Thank you.
yeah, so, first of all, I want to commend you for this. I think that we need to move in this direction. I think obviously we do have a housing crisis. I'd like to see, maybe what we could do with the max accessory dwelling unit permits. It's a standard 20. Can we look at a way to maybe make that reflective of each hamlet community, or make it reflective of the school districts? And yes, I would like to see perhaps maybe a planning process, as Janice suggested, for detached dwelling units, so that there is, there isn't a concern of.
She suggested.
That's up to you,
Well-
whatever you want to do.
Well, Janice, I think, mentioned it in terms of we could put that in here as a sort of a bulwark.
I mean, some of the things I heard was if it's a standalone unit, maybe a greater lot size, whereas the attached unit could have a smaller lot size.
Right.
And perhaps maybe change the size of the dwelling units themselves, maybe a smaller maximum size on both the detached and the attached.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Those are the things that I
Yes,
heard.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Well said.
Okay, so I'd like to, if we're going to do that, then I'd like to kind of do the minimum requirement where we have it at 400 square feet, then we can knock that down to 350, or, just to scale it small, the whole thing, scale it a bit smaller. Now we're getting into like,
New York
I
City
mean, what is it?
sizes.
Huh?
Now we're getting into New York City studio size.
Well, you know, if it's inside a house and, you know, it's an efficiency, you know, there's some efficiencies. And I talk to plenty, like I said, I talk to plenty of young people who are screaming for apartments. And I know they're not going to be the people who come in here and are upset about, you know, a number of things. They won't. No. But we still need to speak for them.
What kind of circumstances are they in that, you know?
That they
'cause
lost-
people haven't been coming to me, so I'm just
Oh, no?
curious.
These are people who work in the community who are looking for apartments. They're either in with their parents or others, and they're kind of couch surfing, and, you know, they ask me, like, have you heard of anything? Do you know
Like
anything?
they have
And they-
career jobs,
Yeah,
or
they're
they're?
teachers, I know a couple of teachers. are looking for-
Teachers?
Yeah, looking for, young teachers looking
And-
for jobs.
and many
Looking
folks
for,
move
places
west.
to live.
Yeah.
Completely.
Karen.
Now, the accessory, just something else, so we would be, it sounds like the board would be okay with detached on larger parcels. Is that a fair statement? No? Okay, we'll work on this offline, I suppose.
Kara, on the first page on E,
Yeah.
why was a fully executed lease agreement removed?
We would require documentation, either in a lease agreement or some other documentation that shows that the maximum monthly rent can't exceed what the town code has adopted at 130%. So usually it would be a lease agreement,
Okay.
but it can be some other documentation.
And then is there a
We could put that back
definition
in.
on family member?
We have them sign an
Affidavit.
affidavit saying that it is a immediate family member that would be residing in the
What?
unit.
Did you say that again?
So, under,
No,
we require under the town code that the tenant be somebody who income qualifies, unless it's an immediate family member. They sign an affidavit, and then that income is waived. The income and the proof of the rent is waived under those circumstances.
So let's say the parents of the kids move in the house, and then the like mother wants to live in, you know, they're not income qualified, but they want to now live in the accessory unit. The children of this family are not going to live in the main dwelling. The parent may not otherwise be income qualified, but they could then
Actually
live there.
happened to
That's
my
not a
friend.
big deal.
And what is a
His
conventional
mother went to
bedroom?
the apartment and they went to the
sorry?
house with the kids.
What is a
Now you can
conventional,
write friend.
no, because it just
Mother
says
went to
no
the
more than two
apartment.
conventional
Yeah.
bedrooms, like what is a convention, I'm just
Him and his wife went to the house.
Where does it say
not
that?
taking any, it's
Page
on.
That's
three.
just a remnant of old. That was in the code since '92. I don't
Okay.
know what it means, but I would say, you know, it's not. It's a size befitting a bedroom.
And then it's
basically.
the
It's like you could fit a
occupancy?
bed and a nightstand and
Well-
the things, you know, you can't call it a bedroom.
Would it mean
It's
like
not that.
like a den, if somebody was using a den as a bedroom, right? That, so they had
Meaning
two
like
bedrooms,
it-
but then they were using a den, I think, right?
As a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I
you have
missed it.
that
What-
too.
what section are
like
we
it's,
on?
it's a
Page
bedroom, a
three.
conventional bedroom. It has a
H.
bed. It's not just like a studio.
And then is occupancy then
H?
based on the square footage, not on the bedrooms? Or is it based on the bedrooms?
Occupancy is always based on
Square footage.
Square footage, yes. That's in the building code.
Well, looks like we have some more work to do to pass it through this board.
But it's great to have something to
Well,
work from.
yeah.
Yeah, and, you know,
Did a lot of
I
work,
hope,
Tommy John.
when we all drive home today, you know, we think about some of the inequities in our current law and how there are hamlets that do not apply the same way that other hamlets apply. And, you know, that's one of the fundamental reasons why I put this forward, in addition to our housing crisis and our young people that need places to live. And senior citizens, too.
Balance it with the environment and quality of life, and we're all set.
Also, I'd like to add in there are families who have members of their families who are disabled, and they would like them to live in proximity to their primary residence, and that was also one of the reasons why we had the detached dwelling, you know, so that is an option for them as well.
Do you want to make a motion really quick?
And the CHF program outlines disability easements,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
Yeah, they
correct. Yep, that is one of our programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right.
So we'll see you back soon for some more
Sorry.
revisions. Would anybody like to give thank you, for anybody like to give an update on anything that happened this week?
I think we're like way
Okay.
Well, Michael, I'm sure you would, right? Or-
No, I mean, we had our first meeting of the Traffic Mitigation and Safety Task Force last night. It was very thoughtful. It was a very thoughtful discussion. A lot of ideas were passed around. Really, that's sort of the brainstorming meeting where we talk about how the meetings are going to go from there on. And we heard from members of the public. I could say majority of the people that spoke, are very pleased to see that the town is taking this seriously and that we're going to make a very concerted effort to try to solve some of the traffic issues that our communities are facing. And our next meeting is tentatively scheduled on May 1st at 6. It'll be a night meeting to accommodate folks who work. We did have it at 4 o'clock, our first meeting, but we just want to make sure other people who may not have been able to attend that one have a chance to attend the next one.
It was very well done. Thank you for organizing it.
Thank you, and I appreciate the support of this board for co-sponsoring that legislation, which allowed us to do that. Councilman Scavone spoke at the podium. Maria was on the dais with us. And we're very, very happy about the direction that this is going to go. I also want to mention, too, that tomorrow night, April 12th at 7 p.m. at Southampton High School, there's going to be an event that is being put on by the Southampton Town Dark Skies Committee at the high school planetarium. Yeah, we'll be looking at the celestial sky.
The guy who puts it on is very good, Joe.
Yes.
Yeah, he's really good.
It's funny, too.
Yeah, so look forward to that.
And
And
he has a long commute.
yeah, so we're
There's no housing out here for him.
precisely. So we're looking forward to that.
I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, Councilwoman McNamara is sponsoring the Great East End cleanup. So this is just a little. I'm doing something on Town Line Road in getting some volunteers up to clean up a portion in conjunction with the Great East End cleanup. That is on Town Line Road, north of Merchants Path, south of the power line. It's traditionally a dumping spot, so we're going to get some volunteers out there to help clean it up. You're all cordially invited, not to take anything away from Cindy's invitation here, but we're going to go out there and clean that up. Also, May 17th, a group called the South Fork Commuter Coalition is going to have a bit of a rally at Hampton Bays, May 17th. And essentially, we are asking for sidings to be included in the capital program of the 5-year capital program of the MTA. So, come on out.
Yeah, we support that initiative. And in fact, have you communicated with County Executive Romaine on that?
Yes.
Because he,
Oh,
okay, good.
Yes.
Because he said that he would
Hasn't,
support.
with his
with us.
office, hasn't confirmed yet. But,
Okay.
love to see all the elected officials of certainly Southampton and East Hampton Town come out.
Okay, thank you. And I had the opportunity to go to the Youth Bureau this week, and I met with Tracy Colson and the team at the Flanders Community Center, and it's very impressive. They do offer so many services, not just recreation, but reading programs, youth in government, the crisis intervention, and a lot of other support initiatives. So I just applaud them for all they do for the youth.
Yeah, in fact, this past week was their Hampton's Got Talent event, and I was their
yeah.
guest judge. So
That
it
must have
was a
been
lot
Not
of
an
fun.
easy job.
No, it really wasn't actually.
It's hard. I do the art show, and it's really hard to pick, because they're all so talented.
Yeah, Kristen Polakis from the West Hampton Performing Arts Center was there. Chris Jones from East End Arts was there as well. He's also a music producer. So I was accompanied by very talented judges.
And lots of talent.
And
on
lots of
display.
talented on stage. Yeah, lots of talent on stage. Great Great performers.
I met with Peter and Tracy yesterday, and they were asking to get some of their students in front of the town board at one of our meetings. And I know that can be difficult and challenging with our agendas and the times, and their school schedule. So I'd like the town board to consider maybe a special meeting in an afternoon at 4 o'clock or something for that specific purpose to, see some of the kids who participate in the Youth Bureau programs.
That'd be great.
But-
We've used the auditorium in the past. I mean, there were times, because I share that wall in my office, and I've heard them singing and stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Or oftentimes our
Okay.
town board meetings, the 1 o'clocks go till 4. It depends on what time they could get here. Maybe we could put them on at the end of a regularly scheduled meeting. But I think that would be great. They could come and report to us on their, trip to Albany.
Right, that's part of the thinking, and some of the other programs. Our advisory committee, they do great work, for instance.
And the only other things, I had the senior department head meeting yesterday in town hall, and my first one, and the needs of every department were aired, and we emphasized the need for communication and how we rely on them, and that we're here for them, and the ultimate goal is to serve the needs of our community. And I think that it went well, and Councilwoman McNamara was there too, and it was, it was informal, and so it was a lot of good back and forth.
Can I come?
Couldn't have a quorum.
Right.
I just wanted to
I guess
add, Bill,
not,
did you have
then.
anything?
I'm good.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I watched the task force meeting yesterday, and it was great because, the major focus on the beginning of the meeting was on County Road 39, obviously, the trade freight traffic.
Tried my best to redirect that.
No, it was
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
great though when the residents came up and they had their actual granular local concerns with their roads, and I think
Right.
that's a big part of it. I mean, the county doing their huge study, I think you can take more of a focus on local issues
Right.
and secondary roads and stuff. It was great.
Yeah, and that's what we thought, why are we gonna, even though, for example, the traffic circles that I happen to think work very well, but we're not gonna study that when we know the county's already looking at that, so
It was
maybe
nice
we
to,
can look at
it's also nice to hear them say that they had a lot of money they were looking into
it.
spending
Well,
on this.
yeah, that's what it sounded like.
And the only other thing I had was the deadline for the Hometown Hero banners is this Monday. So if you haven't ordered one and would like to honor somebody who served or currently serves in the town of Southampton, you can put that order in by Monday.
You have to
April
have the
15th.
photograph, how does it work?
You submit a photograph and there's an online, it'll ask you for their years of service or where they, what theater they served in, if they're currently serving, what branch, and that's pretty much it. And then what we did last year, what we're doing again this year, which is actually a really nice feature, is we asked the families for a biography of the veteran, and Ryan Horn down in CRC went and he recorded all of the biographies. And when you go to the park, you can scan a QR code and you
Well,
can
that's good.
listen to
Oh,
the
I like
biographies
that.
of all the service members.
Well, that's good.
That's really
It's a lot of work.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah, excellent.
Instead of it just being a
Good.
picture, you can know
Sure.
their story.
Absolutely. We
All
did that
right,
with
well,
the
that's-
9/11 memorial. It's just like storytelling. You push it, and it tells the stories of whoever you want to hear from. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful idea. All right, well, good meeting, everyone. If no one has anything else to say, I move to close the meeting.
Second.
All in
We're going to
favor?
executive
Aye.
session.
Aye.
Oh,
Executive.
I'm sorry, wait a minute now, let me say it right. We're going into executive session to discuss acquisitions and confidential legal advice and then close. Thank you.
Why is those two-